Memory transcription subject, Onso, Yodel technical specialist. Date, standardized human time, March 26, 2137. United Nations soldiers were amassing by the Governance Hall, the very building where every Federation diplomat once gathered. If the Shadow Cast's hideout was in that intricate construction, I could almost respect the brazenness to keep the secretive underbelly so close to every other race. There was a wondrous arrogance to it, the very trait that made the Kolshians underestimate humanity, until they no longer had the chance to wipe Earth out. They always assumed they were untouchable and would handily win the war, until the moment Alpha was ours. While the Terrans were still calculating their moves, Kolshian civilians had stormed the hall, and fires danced precariously close to the building. Since the United Nations needed the information within, we were in the process of quelling blazes. The crowd had been incensed by their government throwing away evacuation shuttles, and also that they'd lost to the Predator invaders. Once we'd assessed the situation, Tyler had found us a group of human soldiers to storm the hall with. I wasn't sure where we were going, but we needed one of the native guards to help us. Even the Kolshians responsible for protecting this place seem to have turned on their government. I don't think they're in on the Shadow Cast's locale. I've advised Tyler we need a different way of asking. My gaze monitored Ossel, a Kolshian who seemed none too fond of us. While I didn't like her mingling with our posse, I could respect that she had a brain in her skull. If she was right about the Shadow Cast being buried below ground, it would make our mission much smoother. My main concern was that, should she end up representing a problem for us, I didn't trust Sovlin's loyalties. The Gojid wouldn't turn on humanity, but I doubted he was capable of pulling the trigger on Risel's sister either. This could be a trap set for us by the secret government, luring us into a place where they held the cards. I'll assume we won't just find a floor plan lying around, huh? Samantha asked. The Gojid hovered close to Ossel, as we moved toward the door. I've been to the basement. Your head'll spin trying to get there, through all sorts of twisting corridors, and finally down an escalator. They have a subway train that takes you from the hall to the office spaces. I didn't see anything related to the Shadow Cast back then, so it's alright. Nikonas must have had some sort of bunker, where he'd go if there was an attempt on his life. Idiot might have not expected an assassination, but he ain't so dumb to not have plans for it, Tyler explained. We just gotta ask the guards if they know where Nikki went in an emergency. Private bunker or some shit. Ossel gulped with nervousness. What are you going to do about the civilians who've pushed their way inside? They don't bother us, we don't bother them. They wanna attack us, we have to defend ourselves, but hopefully, they know we're here for the Shadow Cast. If the bullets start flying, you better duck for cover, 'cause I sure ain't giving you a weapon. That blue helmet tells our boys you're with us. Coolio? I don't feel good about being here, with a bunch of predators with guns. I bared my teeth with exasperation. Have those predators shot at you with said weapons? Sovlin, your friend, vouched that humans won't snap. We've lived on a warship with them for months, during life-or-death battles. Stay behind if you want to, Ossel, but we don't have time to tip-claw around your feelings. I want to see what the Shadow Cast has been doing, while we all live up here. I want to know why they care so little about the lives of their own people, and why they lied to us. You're here on my planet now, so I doubt there's any avoiding humans anyway. After everything your people are responsible for, I think it's high time you stop treating us like the fucking monsters, Sam grumbled. Sovlin's spines were bristling beneath his vest. Ossel can't help how she feels, and she's not responsible for what the Kolshians did. It took me a long time not to be afraid around humans. It's not easy to see you as normal. You always act like it's been so easy for us, Baldy. We said hello and everyone tried to wipe us out, over 1 billion dead. Everyone's lost something, but you don't see humans cowering around every alien they see. That's enough. Tyler spat. I understand that you're angry at Kolshians, but Sovlin is right. Ossel had no say in what her government did. She can't help the feeling she's been programmed to have, and she deserves as much patience as we gave any other Xeno. I know it ain't easy, Sam, especially after Carlos, but he'd be the first one to warn you about lumping an entire populace together. The Gojid mimicked a human nod. The belief that makes monsters of us all. He was talking about not seeing your enemies as people. Carlos never wavered in that belief. I don't intend to let you or Ossel make my mistakes. And I don't intend to let us get saddled with someone who'll get in the way of our mission, I countered. This is way more important than what you owe Resell. This is a favor for Marcel, and also the answers for why all of his, and our, torment happened. If Ossel can't control her feelings, then she's not coming with us. Ossel wrapped her tentacles around her torso in a self-soothing gesture. I'll be fine. They killed my brother, and what they did is the reason that predators with guns are here in the first place. If you have a chance to get rid of them and expose their real motives, I won't be in your way. I just wish we'd get it over with. Is this as simple as facilitating revenge for her brother's murder? I still don't trust her not to be a liability, but she doesn't seem like a shadow cast plant. I know how I felt, just seeing my Hensa burned by those exterminators. I could recall the aliens' truck arriving at my family home, and Papa shooting the Hensa for a quick death. Why couldn't the exterminators give predators a swift, painless end, if they had to kill our beloved pets? Thinking about the look in our domesticated pest killer's eyes, I could imagine her tan and black pelt vanishing beneath tongues of flames. The fact that Dino's coloration had been the exact same dug up all my memories, the moment I first encountered a Terran dog. Imagining what had been done to our beloved animals made me furious, just as much as thoughts of the Farsal who'd placed me on predator disease medication. My claws curled up with fury, as the slights against the yodel swirled in my mind. The glassing of Kato hadn't made me feel any better, but it hadn't eased my loathing of the Kolshians either. If I were honest, I hated having to work alongside someone who'd lived a comfortable life on Alpha. By her own words, Ossel hadn't played an active role against the Shadow Caste. That made her complicit, as soon as she'd known the truth about her government. I was here to fulfill Tyler's promise to search for Slanek, not for the secrets humanity sought. Whatever reason the Commonwealth gave for why this needed to happen, it wouldn't suffice. I couldn't care less. Tyler placed a hand on my shoulder, making me jump. Onso. Did you hear me? We're moving, and I need your genius mind workin' for us. You good, bro? I'm fine. I was just remembering the day they burned my Hensa, I admitted. Hearing the Kolshians justify what they've done, I'm not sure I want to be in the room for that. Honestly, I ain't sure I can deal with their contempt for us neither. You don't gotta hear it firsthand, my man. Don't think I don't know you came here for me, and I appreciate it. Let's see if the Shadow Caste's there, alright? I lifted my rifle in acknowledgement, and bounded after the UN soldiers. We pushed our way through the thronging crowd, scaring them back by popping a few rounds into the ground. That proved an expedient way to clear a path, as we moved into the front door. We spotted a Kolshian in guard's armor, who seemed to be helping the rebels milling about in the ornate entryway. Towering pictures of species working together on legislation mocked me from the walls, the false promise of the Federation put in visual form. I tried not to focus on the amicable body language of diplomats past and present, and instead watched Tyler round on the guard. The blonde human's impatient eyes could be felt beneath his biohazard mask. Do you know where Nikona's bunker, safe room, whatever you want to call it, where that is? Where he'd hide if shit hits the fan? Ah, Tyler. Ever so eloquent. Yes. I do, the Kolshian gasped out. Then you'll show us there. We'd like to pay your leader a visit. Okay, but Chief Maroney's bunker is sealed. Even us guards don't have high enough clearance to give you access. Samantha raised an explosive charge. Don't worry. I have a key. Tyler leveled his weapon at the local guard, who wisely took the hint to get moving. The path through the entrance hall had been walked by many diplomats, though protesters had taken to smashing anything that looked fragile. Unlike the one at our behest now, the few defenders of Alpha who resisted the mob had been overrun. They were in the custody of furious Kolshan civilians. Most rebels paid little mind to the hundreds of UN soldiers, swarming in the direction of this Moroni's Fellows bunker. The largest group of dissidents had filtered into the now vacated auditorium, where Noah had given his speech not too long ago. It felt like another lifetime, but none of the Commonwealth's henchmen showed their faces there today. The shadow caste has gone into hiding, it's quite clear. They think they can stay off the radar and regroup, but we won't let that happen. A handful of protesters did scatter in fright at the sight of us, but those who'd quietly sympathized with humanity fell in behind our troops. They must have figured that we were seeking out the shadow caste, who definitely lacked the backing of their citizenry right now. Sovlin was right about the hall being built in a disorienting maze. Unless you treaded these paths every day, an escort was needed to find any particular destination outside the auditorium. Tyler questioned whether the guard was misleading us, before the Gojid piped up that it was, in fact, a meandering maze. Ossel was taking in the sights we passed in silence, and seemed to be considering whether to shrink back into the crowd of Kolshan followers. I wouldn't mind dropping her off with her kind. Before Risel's sister could act on that thought, the guard we were tailing steered us toward an escalator. Sovlin's eyes lit up with recognition, which was a good sign we were getting somewhere. There was an unspeakable awkwardness in hundreds of Terran soldiers, having to walk down the moving stairway in a single file line. Per Tyler's directives, Sam and I each perched on a rolling railing, with Sovlin in front of the large Terran on a step, so that 4 guns pointed at any traps below. Ossel stuck right behind us. She did look as curious as I felt to see whether her theory was true. I was excited by the prospect of bringing this mission to a close, and ensuring that the Kolshan's legacy of destruction came to a close. The Kolshan guard pointed away from a subway train, walked to his indicated spot, and popped out a false wall. Down another few flights of stairs, you'll hit a blast door. I'm not sure your explosives are a big enough key. You need to pass a retinal scan with authorization, and use today's code. I don't have either of those. Regardless, if Moroni's is there, nobody will be allowed in or out. So it's kept shut by a powered switch? Obviously, we just need to cut the power to the door, I pointed out. Do we have any EMP grenades? Tyler grunted with contentment. The range of those bad boys is short, but we sure do. We'll scan through the walls to find where the switch is, and light it up. Okay. Hang on, Ossel piped up. How do you know where to find Chief Moroni's, or what's waiting inside? Well, we don't, but I'm gonna find someone who does. Let the specialists do their business, and we'll see if what's back there's really a bunker. A human soldier searched for the exact location of the switch, before attaching an EMP grenade nearby. She gestured for anyone with electronic devices to step back, to keep them from getting fried, then triggered the device. Like its jaws had been pried open, the mechanism sealing the blast doors released its grip. The thick barriers slid open in slow fashion, and uncorked the mysterious construction behind. Ossel's eyes widened with shock, as she glimpsed the scale of cavernous space behind the entryway. Her theory about the shadow caste's location was spot on. The door hadn't concealed entry to the head of state's bunker. A city stretched as far as the eye could see, with rounded, cave-like edges above rather than a natural sky. Plants had been set up in pathways, between multi-story modules and miles-long spaceship hangars. Lights hovered above the greenery to aid its growth, simulating sunlight and illuminating the cavern. Thousands of Kolshans milled about the streets, with some flocking to shops. There were a few armed sentries posted by the open doors, though none drew their weapons on us. The Terrans were quick to disarm them, and line them up by the doors. I could appreciate the impressive feat of engineering, to carve out an expansive settlement down here. It answered numerous questions about how the conspiracy sourced its perpetrators, and where their advanced fleet had been stashed for all of these centuries. I believed fully that, despite the negligible effort to send average civilians to bunkers, Commonwealth leadership had hidden here in the face of our invasion. It was in line with their standard selfishness and disregard for lives. Just wait until the Kolshan protesters waltz inside, behind the humans, and see how an entire society was kept from them. We're going to make someone point us to Chief Moroni's. Where is Moroni's? Tyler barked, leaning close enough that his breath struck a sentry's cheeks. I think he should discuss the terms of your surrender. The Shadow Fleet thug gulped. Chief Moroni's, thought you might find us. Don't worry, he didn't run. He wanted to parley, and told us to send you to him. The 5-story building painted the color of seagrasses, straight to your right, it's the true office of the chiefs. A short walk from the hall. I pinned my ears back. How do we know this isn't a trick? You don't fight fair. Because it's over. This is the only chance our work will be maintained, for the continuance of all life, and Moroni's gambled that maybe you could understand. We know you want answers, so hear it from the top. Let us spell out our proof that you will kill all of your friends, whether you mean to or not. Tyler hesitated, before stepping back from the Kolshan. Lead us to him. Try anything and you can forget any mercy. You can forget keeping your life. As Samantha, Ossel, and Sovlin followed after Tyler, I found myself hanging around by a stationary group of UN soldiers. I didn't want to hear the root of the Kolshan's propaganda, explaining why humanity would snap and wipe out their sapient allies. What was the point of entertaining such wild delusions, especially when this could easily be a trap? I'd meant to stick with my exchange partner the whole way, but he said he wouldn't force me to listen to Federation bullshit. I could watch his back from out here, searching for signs of Shadow Fleet treachery. When the time came to search for Slanek, I would be there to help my human friend fulfill his promise. I cleared my throat for attention. You go on ahead. I'll wait out here. If anything smells off, get out of there. Tyler glanced over his shoulder, before giving a curt nod. I hate separating from you, but I respect you. Takin, care of yourself. Don't worry. We'll see ya on the flip side, Onso. I flicked my ears in acknowledgement, and watched as Kolshan protesters tailed his contingent of Terran soldiers. Those answers meant a lot more to that posse than they did to me. All I cared about was protecting Learn and my friends. A sliver of me was curious what justification the Shadow Caste thought humanity would care about, but it would be delusional ravings if they truly thought Earth would carry on their work. I rested back on my heels about a grueling day's exploration, and committed to a diligent watch outside the building where Moroni's was supposed to be waiting. As long as humanity found the closure they were looking for, perhaps this wouldn't be an entirely wasted endeavor. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, United Nations Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, March 26, 2137. The captured Kolshan sentry led us up several flights of stairs, after the UN soldiers rejected taking the elevator, and I waited with unease for a trap to show itself. There was only a modest room where an elderly Kolshan, with baby blue skin and a pompous air about him, waited. The figure claiming to be Moroni's gestured to the seats, an offer Tyler accepted after some hesitation. I plopped down next to the blonde human, while a skeptical-looking Ossel found a chair next to me. Onlookers from the UN and Kolshan dissenters packed into the room, ready to bring the Commonwealth leader into custody. Would he be wise enough to surrender? Moroni's leaned forward. Well, humans, before you say a word, let me answer the obvious question. I'm Chief Moroni's, the successor to Nikonas, but unlike him, I don't paint a target on my back. I've tried to operate from the shadows, and everything I've done has been to crush dissent and ensure the continuance of our work. I don't know if your kind can understand, but you simply must. I understand you've built quite the underground city here. How many residents? Tyler prompted. Millions in this city alone. This is the shadow capital, a mirror to what you see above ground, but there are other residences beneath our cities with separate entrances. You could find your way to one of them by bullet train. Much of our space was devoted toward the Shadow Fleet, before your breed destroyed it. I don't know what I hope for from this conversation. I believe you do care about your friends, so maybe if you realize that you're exposing them to tremendous harm, you'll do the right thing. What are you talking about? I'll explain everything. I can see several of my own citizens are curious to find out why we needed to protect them from predators. Let me start by directing a question at your off-world Gojid friend. Captain Sovlin, how would you feel, knowing you and any other herbivore who's interacted with humans could wither from the inside out? That your mental faculties could vanish in an instant, years later? I waved my claws dismissively. I'd feel nothing, because it's not true. Predator contamination is a lie, Moroni's. Everything the Federation taught is wrong, the humans aren't a disease. Don't sound so convinced. You came here to ask why we began taking action against predators. I intend to tell you the full story, and after I do, we'll see if you still want to be sitting right next to one of those things. A disease is precisely what they are, and I'll lay out a scientific accounting for why that is true. You cannot argue with a mountain of evidence. Not unless you're the Federation, Samantha sneered. Did some animal rot after it died, and you're convinced it's tainted? No. It was much worse than that. The Kolshan race was placed in immense peril, by the filth that festers in a predator's fluids. And in the humans' defense, I don't think they realize what they're doing. Was Moroni's really trying to sell this tired argument of predator exposure giving us predator disease? Terran therapists had shown that mental conditions were more complex, as were the actual neurological causes behind them. It was fear-mongering to allude that I'd show signs in a nonspecific amount of years. While we hadn't known the Earthlings long enough to disprove that, they'd not passed any ill effects to the prey animals on their blue marble. I leaned back in contempt, though I noticed Ossel scooting her chair further away from the humans. She wouldn't take much convincing to believe that the primates were an infectious threat, given her instinctual disgust to them. I am curious what scientific account Moroni's thinks he can string together. He does sound like he believes it himself, just like Niconis did. I do want to know what pushed Alpha down the path of causing so much harm to hundreds of sapient species. Whatever the truth was, it could be as simple as one predator being a carrier for many diseases, and the Commonwealth applying that logic to anything that ate flesh. Even if it were true about humans, we knew that alien diseases didn't cross the species threshold, due to differences in biology. I was at a loss, conjuring my own explanations. It seemed my Terran companions were mystified too. Tyler confirmed that his helmet camera was rolling, fully intending to capture every word the Kolshan said on video. He rested his elbows on the table, sensing that juicy information was about to flow. The blonde human's expression was hidden beneath his mask. Speak. Tell us everything, from the very beginning. How the Shadow Caste came to be is our business. Well, it started with a string of mysterious deaths, decades before we made first contact with the Farsal. The strange disease was 100% lethal and unresponsive to our medicines, so if symptoms showed, it was a death sentence. Moroni's pulled up a series of mass graveyards, and ghastly images of sickly Kolshans. They would lose their memory and their sensibilities, resulting in aggression and delusion. At first, the plague didn't seem to be transmissible from person to person, so we didn't quarantine victims with a strict enough tentacle. It was only years later that the people who had contact started showing symptoms. That's a long-ass incubation period, Sam commented. Indeed. There wouldn't be a trace of any microbial agents in their tissue, and yet their brains were rapidly and positively ravaged. Once we clued into the staggering delay in symptom onset, scientists were able to piece together the origin, stories from years before the first victims, where a local predator called the Tarani went off the deep end, and started dropping dead in the wild. Select other animals in the ecosystem, to a lesser degree, had also begun to decay. We established a link between the increased predator activity, and the deaths that had plagued us. Tyler recoiled in confusion. I don't understand. How'd the Colchians get infected to begin with? How's it spread? Y'all roamed the wilds enough for a plague to pop off? We didn't know what the contaminant was, and we still don't. What we're certain of is that it contaminated the soil and the water, because victims were linked to nearby water mains and food shipments from the Tarani plague's epicenter. That's why we can tell you scientifically that contact with predators and their byproducts leads to an irreversible decline. We called the disease the hunger, and the entire government banded together to nip it in the bud. The hunger, I murmured. That's what you called the human's vitamin deficiency in the archives. Now, you understand, and you'll understand how everything we've done has been to stop this scourge from ever showing its face. I'll address the human element after I've laid the groundwork, so there's no seeds of doubt. But to grasp where the shadow cast came from, I hope our citizens can understand what we're protecting them from. You have to know how we stopped the spread of the disease. Samantha groaned. Let me guess. Burn everything? Actually, yes. Fire seemed to be the only thing that could cleanse away the contaminants. While Chief Maroney's searched up new images of the disease control efforts, I considered what I had just learned. The humans weren't reacting with enough concern toward this invisible plague that only showed the tendrils of its infection after years. The photographs that the Colchian chieftain was displaying seemed like genuine historical documents. Had the Terrans not warned us about the risk of them spreading the hunger, for fear it'd push us away? Perhaps they had a cure in the form of this B12 vitamin, but I didn't understand why the transmissible agent didn't show on any tests. Ossel looked more petrified than I was, with her extended contact with my friends today. Maybe predator disease can be caused by other factors than an infectious agent, but the Colchians were right about microbes being one cause. I just find it difficult to believe the caring humans would put the Venlil at risk like that. I've seen firsthand how empathetic and protective they are toward their friends. Surely they would have warned Governor Tarva, except Maroney's claims they're unaware. The chief pulled up dated clips of Colchian exterminators in full-body suits, which had complex air filters atop the standard getup. I could see them burning the sickly corpses of curved fang predators, and in some cases, living specimens that showed symptoms of the disease. In later timestamps, they had set out to wipe the Tarani out entirely, even ones that hadn't presented with signs yet. The most horrifying footage was them tranquilizing their own infected citizens, before burning them alive. Corpses from the mass graveyard were also dug up and incinerated, to slow the soil contamination. This ghastly outbreak explained why they were so determined to cleanse predators from every ecosystem. The exterminators were born. That fire suit acts not only as a safeguard from the flamethrowers, but also a biohazard suit, not unlike the gear the humans are wearing now. Those masks just might protect the Colchians you've interacted with today, Maroney's continued. Other predators besides the Tarani were attracting the disease too, so we aimed to kill all of them. Any animal corpses had to be incinerated, before its entrails could settle. Our own dead were reservoirs of disease too. It's the reason we have forsaken our aquatic roots. The water was its preserver. We've kept up those practices to this day to prevent it from ever returning, here or on other worlds. I swallowed with unease, disquieted by my months in close quarters with Terrans. Chief, might I ask, does this relate to predator disease at all? It does. By tearing down those predator disease facilities, those humans are crippling your ability to detect the disease early. Aggression is one of the primary signs. Besides that, we couldn't afford to have any nonconformists violating our quarantine policies, or engaging in predatory behavior. We barely kept a lid on the spread. That's all well and dandy, but I don't hear nothing about no shadow cast, Tyler pointed out. It doesn't sound like you were doing this in secret. We weren't, with the public health measures being so obvious. The secrecy didn't start until long after we put the plague to bed, when we turned our attention starward. We made contact with the Farsal, and eventually told them about the hunger. They were able to point out isolated instances of Talsk's animals suffering inexplicable declines in post-first contact times. While not as contagious as our case, it seemed to have jumped to their kind on occasion. We feared we brought the disease with us. We used old quarantine methods, before the contaminants could mutate to their most transmissible form, to stop the Farsal from facing a similar outbreak to Alpha. Sam crossed her arms. You magically knew it was the same sickness, and that it would turn out the same as your hunger shit? Even if this one wasn't the same pathogen, it was close enough to hit home. Convergent evolution is our universe's reality, Predator. It's why we see such similar patterns on all worlds. All lifeforms exist to accelerate entropy. Chaos is the natural state of all we observe, and there is nothing that can facilitate such large-scale disarray and decline as this disease does. Lethal contaminants and predators are two tentacles of entropic force. It's why your ilk are found on all worlds. We do not accept this axiom. And we don't accept people calling us predators, but you always find a way to do it anyway. Why don't you skip to the part where the shadow cast comes into the picture? It all traces back to the crocodile, and the Farsal stopping us from doing what was necessary. It was a regrettable mistake to chance flesh-eaters escaping our oversight. Shall I continue, or is the long-maned one going to interrupt my story further? Ossel squeezed her eyes shut. Please let him continue, Samantha. It explains a lot about why we're disgusted by predators. That response is triggered by ancestral sources of disease. It's why humans are leery of insects, I remarked. I'd also like to hear the rest of Moroni's story, Sam. I'm, concerned. You shouldn't be. We're not radiating invisible biohazards, for fuck's sake. But since Tyler's so keen on getting this jackass on the record, I'll let him talk a little longer, the Australian soldier conceded. Good. I need to hear what he was going to say about the crocodile. Nikonis mentioned that they were aggressive, and that the Kolshians tried to find the source of it. Maybe Nishtal's population was carrying the hunger too. The tenets I'd thought hadn't held a shred of truth were starting to make sense, in light of such dangerous contaminants that predators could pass along. At this point, I doubted the chief had any incentive to lie, and he had the weight of evidence on his side. Moroni's insinuation was that his people wanted to exterminate the crocodile, the second they identified the dietary risk. The question was why the Farsal states had pushed back against it, and how they'd crafted the curing process. This could be the reason my own species was converted away from omnivory, rather than killed. It might give us the full story of the conspiracy's founding and goals. Moroni's waved a tentacle dismissively. You know the deal. The crocodile were aggressive, and when we noticed their diet, it explained why their temperament was so much different from ours. Contaminants in meat impacted higher thinking, culminating in the hunger after large quantities of buildup, perhaps passed down after it affects genes. We wanted to glass Nishtal, but the Farsal couldn't live with killing another sapient race, not without exhausting alternatives. The cure, I breathed. Yes. The archives were established on Talsk as a secluded location for the experiments, and a way to quarantine cured specimens. The hunger didn't present symptoms for years, so lengthy testing was the only way to gauge whether they'd been mellowed. The Farsal's gene edits worked, to our surprise, and the Federation's purpose was born. We'd stop all sapients from eating meat and cleanse their worlds, to prevent exposure to the hunger. Sam drummed her fingers with impatience. I still hear fuck all about the shadow cast. That all happened because there was public backlash to what we did to the crocodile. Nishtal didn't appreciate being saved at gunpoint either, and we worried they could seek regression someday. The shadow caste was formed of those who believed in the cause, and with the Farsal's aid, we set out to wipe the record and disguise future cures. The only way to ensure the cured species never found out the past was to make our own citizens unaware. Why is it fair that we don't know the full extent of the predator threat? That our lives meant nothing to you? It clearly didn't even work, because everyone found out the truth. Ossel spat. You helped the orcs, and then these humans were left alive. Darling, our plan worked for centuries, until arrogant Nikonus blabbed everything to a reporter. Just like he said about to reclaim anyone who rebelled against us, instead of crushing them like I did, they had their one chance during their uplifting. I agree that not knowing the full threat was a problem. The plague is still in the history books, but Alpha forgot why the pandemic was so scary. We needed a threat to continue to enforce our laws, and remind people why predators were dangerous. The orcs were perfect for that. You wanted the war, for my family to get fucking eaten alive, so you had an excuse to keep up your quarantine measures? I hissed. Yes. You get it, Sovlin. Back to the Kolshan lady's point about our predator occupiers here now, that's on the Farsal. They refused to kill humanity like we ordered and lied about it, even though it was clear these primates were beyond salvation. We tried to fix them, the same as any omnivore, but the quarantined Terrans in the archives all exhibited traits of the hunger. We know now that a cobalamin vitamin gives them some strange, long-lasting immunity, rendering the disease dormant and allowing sustained sapience. This requires further study. Samantha slapped her forehead. So you do know about B12 now? We got some humans to talk about how they could adapt to plants without dying, during our personal experiments at Milo. We believe these renewed curing efforts might have been successful in ridding you of the disease, if you long-term abstained from flesh. Ain't happening, for many reasons, not least. I know you can't give up your addiction on your own. But listen, if you care about the friends you've been infecting, who could start dying in a few years, without warning, you must continue our work. If you care, you'll leave the herbivores alone. Maybe you'll even become a new threat, enough to remind the masses to be afraid of predators. It's a sacrifice someone must make. My eyes watered with sorrow, as Chief Maroney's finished presenting his case. His explanation fit with everything we'd uncovered along our journey, and it gave a reason for the Federation's entire history. It seemed a cruel twist of fate that loyal, friendly humanity would be asked to make that sacrifice, to isolate themselves so not to contaminate their friends. I'd come to love my crew aboard Monahan's ship, and while the contamination sounded like a terrible way to go, I was willing to die for the Terrans' right to exist. Their culture was too rooted in hunting for them to give up their identity and cure themselves. If humans were immune to the hunger, as long as they could access B12, keeping to Earth and forsaking the sapient coalition might be the best option. I knew they'd never be the orcs, not with how their empathy had prevailed time and again. My spines bristled as I waited for Tyler's response, which would address how the Terrans would handle this latent threat Maroney's described. It didn't seem fair that, after all this work to usurp the Kolshans as the galaxy's supreme power, the predators had to take their place in some capacity. They didn't deserve to suffer for factors beyond their control. It's not their fault that they've been spreading the hunger. I don't think what the Kolshans did was right, but we can't let predatory diseases wipe out the galaxy. Tyler raised a finger, in a wait a minute gesture. That's a nice theory, except for the fact it's all horseshit. We ain't infectious, and B12 don't work like that. Your hunger is caused by prion, man. Misfolded brain proteins, Samantha chimed in. Freak mutations that are transmissible if you make contact with infected tissue. The reason you see it most in predators is because they eat said tissue. Chief Maroney's blinked, dumbfounded. You know what causes the hunger? You can treat it? I heard you did with your archives rescues. The two aren't related. Prion diseases aren't treatable, but we can detect them with blood tests. We're not infected just by virtue of being predators or eating meat. That's the difference between us. We live in a world of science, and you live in a world of fear and speculation. We seek proof and answers, while you seek verification for your existing beliefs. Tyler bobbed his head. Our vision might be narrower than yours, but at least we ain't blind as y'all. Sounds to me like you did all of that horrible shit for nothing. It sounds like that to me too, Ossel hissed, while the Kolshan dissenters piped up with agreement. You believe Terrans are moral, and care for their friends, you said so. You have zero proof the humans, or any omnivores are dangerous, after all. You tried to scare us into believing that it was dangerous to be around them. They're people like us, not biohazards or a threat. I'm sorry I considered it for a minute, I huffed. This is just another falsehood you broadcasted. That's not possible. This human says it's transmitted by eating flesh. Maroney's protested, his tentacles flailing in frantic motions. The hunger is seen on Earth, like every other world. We did this to save all sapient life. Tyler slammed a fist on the table. We don't need your salvation. We need two things, your surrender, and you personally to show us where you keep your prisoners. This is our galaxy to run, and we ain't gonna be keeping up the death and suffering circus. 'Cause you're the real predators. You've led the galaxy into ignorance, decline and disarray. Your legacy is entropy, huh? If my words haven't moved you, maybe that is all we leave behind. We were supposed to save lives, and without that purpose, the shadow cast is nothing. I'll order the workers to surrender, and lead you to the place where we keep humanity's friends. Follow me. The Kolshan chieftain stood with a defeated posture, reeling from the human's certainty that so-called prion were responsible for their plague. It was a positive sign that the shadow caste agreed to stand down, with their mission undermined and their fleet erased. I was relieved to hear that the Terrans weren't a hazard, and that their science had illuminated the dark corners of our past once more. Where Maroney's claimed to have a mountain of evidence on his side, it was the predators who could interpret it correctly. Ossel, the other Kolshan citizens listening, and anyone watching Tyler's video would see who was in touch with reality. Once we recovered our friends, the next item on the agenda would be to set the galaxy onto a better path. There were many issues to iron out, but with the Federation's lies and deceit stripped away, I was hopeful we could birth a new era of enlightenment. Memory transcription subject, Onso, Yodel technical specialist. Date, standardized human time, March 26, 2137. I was glad to have a moment to relax and contemplate the city, rather than listen to Kolshan spiels. There were engineering advantages to building underground. Natural disasters above ground wouldn't touch the shadow cast, and the insulation of the encompassing topsoil entailed a constant temperature. It wouldn't need excessive budget expenditures on air conditioning and heating. It did pose the question of how close to the surface Offa's groundwater was, and how they'd handle any leakage. This seemed a modernized version of sprawling underground cities on Lern, such as Thyson's Calamia's Burrow, a massive complex that could house tens of thousands of occupants. Its main intention was as sanctuary from invaders during the Grain Wars. Human fingers snapped right next to my left eye. Onso, are you daydreaming about some engineering shit? What can I say, I can't handle boredom. Glad you're back safely. That didn't take long, I remarked, flicking an ear at Tyler. We got the shadow cast surrender, and found out this all has to do with a prion plague. One more step, for gettin' out of here. Ossel's bulbous eyes looked glazed over. The government never believed that humanity was dangerous at all. I saw prey-like behavior on their data dump, but it was so misaligned with my instincts. The reason I feel like I'm going to puke, just looking at them, it's selective breeding, based on a false threat. It's all just lies. I know how that feels, Sovlin sighed. My society, my family, the Federation I wasted my life on, my identity as a Gojid, and my knowledge as a captain. It's all gone down the drain. If an old man like me can find a way forward, then you can too. Samantha rolled her eyes. Stop right there. Your way forward is tricking people into calling onso slurs. It's okay, Sam. That's what I expect from a spikeback, I said cheekily, using the human-invented word. Now why the fuck are we drifting after some old Kolshan? I'm just following you guys. Maroney's here is supposed to be leading us to Slanik, assuming he's part of their prisoner collection. I hope that Venlil is alright. I feel responsible for setting his fate in motion, Sovlin sighed. Tyler pursed his lips. I don't know if he's there, but I sure don't think you'll be a welcome sight if he remembers anything. I ain't gotta tell you how he feels about you. My whiskers twitched with nostalgia. Last time we spoke, Slanik told me he was unwell. I warned him not to use those two words. Why don't we save the speculation on his mental state for if we find him? Sam asked. Keep moving, stay alert. I'd trust the word of the fucking boy who cried wolf over Maroney's. Me too, Tyler agreed. But given how old this squid is, I doubt the lockup is a long walk from his ivory tower. We'll see who our supposed prisoner friends are. Our posse, along with a sizable contingent of UN soldiers and angry Kolshan citizens, marched after Maroney's for a first-hand glimpse at how the shadow cast caged insurrectionists. I processed the tidbits of new information as we walked, leaving a mental note to read up on transmission methods of this prion plague. While I hadn't heard the Commonwealth's rationale from their lips, I could assume they linked eating meat to the acquisition of the disease in some way. Somehow, they decided predators' elimination was for the benefit of all life, except the predators, of course, then used that to justify forcing their ideology on hundreds of worlds. Why that excused a silent partnership with the orcs or crushing unruly herbivores like us yodel, was another matter. There's no consistency, even in their internal logic. Whatever piss-poor justification they make for their all-encompassing control, I'm happy with my decision not to listen to their disingenuous desperation. I knew it'd be some shitty excuse. Chief Maroney's shuffled toward a sprawling complex, a single-story structure which lacked exterior clues to what hid inside its confines. The decrepit concrete walls looked bleak enough to be a prison, and the sensory input didn't brighten at all when we stepped inside. Rows of hallways passing forward were arranged under Kolshan numerals, with the centermost one having the two slanted lines that represented 1. I wasn't sure why the count started at the center, and judging by how mystified Tyler behaved behind his visual translator, he wasn't either. The Kolshan leader started toward the dim corridor at the complex's heart, leading into its recesses. The humans were quick to stop him for a question-and-answer section. Why the central chamber? Tyler barked, suspicion emanating from his voice. What are the other ones? Maroney's made a sweeping gesture with his tentacles. This isn't the only shadow cast prison. The one under the Capitol is reserved for disloyal citizens above ground, and foreign actors who are working against our interests. They're arranged by the severity of their actions. The closer you get to row 1, the more grave your misdeed. That, and it's usually reserved for individuals who are well known in the public eye and could have propaganda uses. There are plenty of citizens in the other halls, but I know who you're here for. You want row 1 and the lab. I stiffened with alarm. The lab? A lab, for what? I don't like the sound of that neither. Are y'all cooking up some cure shit back there? Tyler parroted my concerns. Chief Maroney's blinked in irritation. The Shadow Capital's research lab is for several purposes. Yes, it's a backup, in the instance that we need to take up our own research, a prudent choice, given what happened on Tulsk. We might have dabbled in some human experiments, after encouraging results at Milo. With the new information at hand, it might have been possible to integrate you, rather than relegate you to the Arxer's role. However, its primary service to our cause is as a neurological studies facility. The fur on my hackles raised, as I picked up on the implication. A predator disease facility. Is that where you've been keeping Slanik? I'd say it's more focused on the success of our re-education measures, as well as analyzing the brain scan data to better understand and target aggressive areas. Some people need to be reminded of the proper beliefs. The Venlul who shot Nikonis in cold blood, after exposure to humans, is a prime example. "What the fuck have you done?" "He's here," the elderly Kolshan purred, sick amusement in his eyes. "But he won't be thrilled to see your predator friends." My hind legs bunched up to lunge at the elderly Kolshan, but Tyler hurriedly pushed me back. I could sense anger projecting from his gaze, beneath the biohazard mask, and wondered why he had stopped me from putting this old chieftain in his place. How dare he use such a flippant tone to talk about rewriting someone's brain, no doubt through cruel, invasive methods. The blonde human revealed his rationale for stopping me, as his gloved hand curled up into a fist. Before hundreds of witnesses, he smashed his knuckles into the Kolshan's eye, smashing through the socket. I could see Sovlin wince, knowing from his first meeting with Officer Cardona how strong the gargantuan primate could be. Does Tyler think that I can't fight for myself? I'm more than capable of taking on an arrogant, elderly despot, especially one who's so casual about horrific deeds. "Let me take a swing at him," I protested, as Moroni's nursed an eye that was turning purple. "For everything he's done." Tyler shook out his hand, flexing his fingers. "Nah, we're done now. I ain't gonna let you swing at him, 'cause if anyone gets in trouble out of this, it should be me. That was for Marcel, and for Slanek, don't you ever mock him again. To be clear, we will come back for everyone wrongfully detained here. Take us down to row 1, and try to learn some empathy on the way." Ossel turned to Sovlin. "I thought you said the humans weren't gonna attack without warning." The Gojid chewed at his claws with discomfort. The chief deserved it." "I don't disagree, he threw away countless Kolshan lives. I'm pissed at him too. I just want an honest answer about how high their threshold for violence is, so that I don't say anything that provokes an assault. Unless you torture their friends, you're fine. Tyler saves his beatdowns for special cases." Samantha rolled her eyes. "But if I threw a right hook at a prisoner, I'd be unhinged." "Well, I knew Slanek and Marcel, and I have a better right hook," Tyler said. "Pfft, tell yourself whatever you need to sleep at night, but you don't have a boxing career in your future. Now make that Kolshan sot get his ass in gear." "I give the orders here, but get the fuck moving, Moroni's, or I will let Sam swing at your other eye." Chief Moroni's marched down the central corridor, as the Terrans kept their wary eyes trained for any traps. The Commonwealth leader was still reeling from Tyler's punch. Nikonis' replacement leaned over a retinal scanner, mumbling a remark about the primates being lucky they hadn't tenderized both of his eyes. There were clicks as blast door mechanisms came loose, and it slowly creaked open to reveal the full hallway. Dingy prison cells lined both sides, with despairing inmates backing away from the bars at the sound of our footsteps. Some of the prisoners were, in fact, Kolshans, but there were a number of different species scattered in the hundreds of cells. Any resident of Offa with serious aspirations of unseating the Commonwealth government would land themselves in here. The stench was unmistakable, showing that they'd had negligible access to hygiene facilities. A handful seemed happy to see a human posse marching in, and begged for us to let them out. Some UN soldiers kept back to help liberate and document the captives, perhaps taking meticulous records for the Sapient Coalition or the Durerton Shield to witness. The Kolshan protesters tagging along seemed horrified, after hearing that some of their own neighbors could be thrown here, without due process. Ossel looked like she wished she could swing at Moroni's herself. "There's more prisoners here than I expected, but no sign of Slanek or a lab. If these are the average inmate's accommodations in this facility, I don't want to imagine what his life has been like." The bars of a cage next to us rattled, drawing our attention. I saw a tear-stricken Kolshan, pressing his face against the barrier. Something about his violet visage tickled my memory. Sovlin paused for a brief second, before his eyes widened. Tyler craned his neck at us, confused why the two herbivores in his squad were stopping. The Gojid moved closer to the cell, and the prisoner's eyes, tinged with a bit of instinctive disgust to the humans, widened with desperation. "Help me," the Kolshan pleaded, in a hoarse voice. Sovlin tilted his head. "You're the Kolshan commander from the Battle of Kwa." "I'm sure of it. Captain Monahan talked you into having the fleet stand down. What the fuck are you doing in here? Did you realize what you were doing was wrong?" I didn't want to kill civilians. Herbivores. The human, I remember what she said. That you would reach Alpha. You have now, and if we're still standing, I did the right thing. I saved my men from a battle we couldn't win. If you wouldn't sacrifice the Maziks, how could I? Tyler wheeled on Maroney's. "Why is he here?" "I don't know why every prisoner is here," the chief grumbled. "This one, I do. Commander Telvos humiliated the Commonwealth, and disobeyed direct orders. He allowed your allies to survive, abandoning the battle. We could not tolerate treasonous defiance, questioning of our orders. The greatest treason of all, asking questions." My ears pinned back with fury, though it was cathartic to see Maroney's swollen eye staring back at me. I still wanted to beat the shit out of this pompous asshole. You tried so hard to snuff out curiosity and wonder for the universe. Ossel scowled. In prison for not rendering the Maziks extinct. You shadow cast our monsters. Spare me the indictment. Do you want me to take you to Slanik, or do you want to lament every prisoner's life story? If it's the former, I suggest we keep moving. Chief Maroney's didn't wait for an answer, stomping off down the hallway, as pleas for help rose from the furthest cells. A duo of UN soldiers stopped off to guard Telvo's cage. We weren't going to get involved with freeing an enemy commander, especially considering that he'd threatened to obliterate a civilian populace, under orders or not. It was a war crime by Terran law. As we drew nearer to the far wall, which seemed to be a containment bulkhead on closer inspection, another prisoner clamored for our attention. This time, I recognized the alien face outright. It was the testy Duertan ambassador to Earth, Koji, the one who jumped at the chance to abet Nikona's assassin. She'd been missing ever since, and unlike Slanik, the Kolshans hadn't publicized her capture. The Duertan were never overly fond of humans, and that started from the top. Koji may not have the knowledge that the UN saved Kalkwa, given that she was captured well before that started. "Humans," the gray avian squawked, wrapping stress-plucked wings around the bars. "I'm sorry, for everything, for ever rebuffing your friendship. Please, let me out. It's horrible here, I hear screams from the lab, all the time. I think it's going to be me next. They kept my mind intact so I could watch what they did to Kalkwa, clip by clip. Are there any survivors? Let me out." Samantha crossed her arms. "We bailed Kalkwa out, though I'm sure the Kolshans omitted that part. There were still billions that died, but without the UN, it would have been the whole fucking planet. The Shield fought beside us here, at the Battle of Alpha. Seems your side finally wants to be on better terms," Sovlin grumbled. "Your leadership definitely want to bomb this world, but the humans got them to hold off long enough for us to scope out the shadow cast. The entire homogeneity fleet came," I added. I caught the reasoning as, if our side lost, then Kalkwa would be overrun by the Commonwealth anyway. We have the chance to tear down the Federation, and for you to return as your homeworld is rebuilt. They're alterations of our societies, and stifling rule, over, finished. Thank humanity for making it happen." Koji's beak parted with hope. "If what you're saying is true, it seems we owe humanity a huge debt." It did seem odd, that the Kolshans only showed me clips from a small time frame, and not the aftermath. I'm relieved to know some of us survived, and I want to help with revenge on Alpha. Let me out. Well, we would like the Duertan to be more open to our friendship. Tyler hesitated, before punching the button to unlock Koji's door. The avian stumbled forward on unsteady feet, before wrapping her wings around his waist, sobbing. Easy now. Say, I wondered why you helped kill Nikonus too. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The archives, the Kolshians and the Farsal stripped us of individual thought. Our opinions were too strong, our intellect too sharp for them. How do you ever get that back? Who are we? The consensus on Calqua, and my individual feeling, was that they needed to pay. We made a decision based on emotion, and it felt good. Was it worth it? I questioned. Billions of Duerden died because of that one irrational choice. If I had known what would have happened to my beautiful home, I would have never put this plan in motion. We didn't think, we just wanted the figurehead who took our minds dead. I knew our role would be glaring, but I didn't imagine it'd condemn Calqua. When I tried to fly away from Nikonus' corpse, a drone had no trouble tracking me down and caging me. I've all but forgotten what life looks like, or how it feels to have air under my wings. My sole thoughts are dreams of home. My friend carefully removed Koji's arms from his torso, wishing to keep moving. We got a real special friend of mine to rescue. I don't know what you meant by screams in the lab, but I ain't wantin' to leave Slanik in there a second longer. We are happy you're safe, and you are goin' home, Ambassador. Head over to the medics back there, and they'll find you a transport. Thank you, again. I'm sorry that I didn't see your kindness sooner, but I hope we can meet again, so I can make up for my past hostility. If you want to make up for it, keep your people's bombers at bay. We want to do a thorough investigation of the shadow cast, which could take weeks. Plus, there's a lot of victims to rescue. We need the shield to stay patient and give us time to do our jobs, for everyone's sake. Whatever pull I have with my government, I'll see that you have as much time as you need. Good luck, humans. The Duerden ambassador trudged off in the direction of Terran medics, all but collapsing in their arms. Comprehending the stories of every prisoner in these walls would take months. After encountering a number of familiar faces along the way, it drilled home how punitive the Kolshians were to anyone who thwarted their wishes. From Qua to Calqua, there had been no tolerance for rebellion. Any people who gave humanity the slightest aid were whisked away, if the shadow caste could get their tentacles on those poor souls. I doubted they'd been more merciful during other battles and incidents. Maronis had gotten to work opening the bulkhead, which concealed the lab behind its structure. If the lab was the heart of Kolshian experimentation, I was worried about what state we'd find Slanik in. I'd heard the words from the chief's lips, before Tyler threw a haymaker at him. There had been the idle comments about so-called neurological focuses, and it was a safe assumption that re-education was tantamount to rewriting neurochemistry. It was quite possible that our Venlil friend wouldn't be happy to see us, which meant he might not accompany us willingly. I could only imagine how devastated Marcel would be, if his exchange partner abhorred his existence. Our Venlil might not be the only person back there either. Maronis had claimed that the shadow caste dabbled in human experiments after Milo. This matched with Koji's mention of multiple screams hailing from the lab. The inhumane procedures could be stretched to several test subjects, for different purposes. It was a good thing that the UN soldiers wore biohazard gear to AFA, because the cure was the only type of integration efforts the Kolshians had for omnivores. There was no telling how terrible the conditions would be in the lab, but I was prepping myself for the worst. It would be a positive outcome if our friend's persona was still in there at all. Memory transcription subject, Onso, Yodel technical specialist. Date, standardized human time, March 26, 2137. When the lab became accessible, I could see excesses of equipment. Shadow caste workers must have been cleared out, but the traces of their presence were still there. A dirty plate left out on a countertop, a chemical beaker which had been hastily put away, and crimson blood samples still on slates under microscopes. The Kolshian chief waited as we passed the last prison cells, stepping into the deepest recess of the facility. It was rare that visible fright displayed on Tyler's face, but I could tell that worrying about Slanek made him sick to his stomach. Sovlin and Samantha, meanwhile, were off in their own land, commenting on days long gone. Remember when you and, the Gojid's voice hitched, as Carlos' name fizzled out in his throat. The Takkan ambassador was taken prisoner by the Kolshians, and you snuck off to set him free. Was the prison similar? Samantha shook her head. Not at all. It was on a tiny quasi-satellite of Alpha, and while it wasn't advertising its existence, it wasn't too hard to trace where they took him. I don't know why they didn't hide him away. Maroney's, care to comment? That was an interrogation facility, a public one, for predator-diseased individuals, Chief Maroney's replied. Nicona's plan wasn't to make Ambassador Woolry vanish, but to blame him as an accomplice, and show that we had caught the predator in a deceitful act, a little too late. We turned Woolry into the public cast with the claim that he'd been overheard, telling Noah how to sabotage the engine. Their decision was to interrogate him, before he would have been returned to a cell up above our heads, where other publicly known traitors, like Riesel, were held. Ossel's tentacles tensed up, and her tail bunched up as well. My brother was not a traitor. You dragged Woolry's name through the mud too over being an accomplice. I believed your story, that a bloodlusting human sabotaged the shuttles. You murdered my brother, and now I find out, he wasn't the only innocent person you wanted to smear. There needed to be a reason why other species couldn't attempt diplomacy with Earth. Every diplomat's death, and selling the narrative that humanity turned an ambassador into an accomplice, because Noah couldn't make it back to Skalga without dreaming about murdering an unsuspecting soul. Shut the fuck up, I hissed. I didn't want to listen to your rationale before, and I sure as shit don't want to hear it now. Humans just wanted peace, and you didn't care who got hurt along the way, if it meant their kindness failed. Tyler smacked his fist against his other palm threateningly. Let's not ask this sack of shit any more questions. I ain't able to keep my cool through more of his answers. I want to get to Slanek, no Stalin, or nothing. I opened the door. The female predator asked me a question, Maroney's protested. Samantha shook her head. You answered it, but with way more grandstanding than was necessary. Let's try again with a different question. Where the fuck is Slanek? The Kolshian chief took several steps back, before leading the way into the sprawling chamber. The right side seemed to be examination rooms and surgical suites, which left me shuddering to think of the implications. Off on the left wing, where Maroney's was hurrying toward, were living quarters, cramped rooms with elevated, oval-shaped doors that reminded me of the brig on our ship. The first prisoners we passed were Dosser, which merited a pit stop from some UN soldiers. These must be the civilians the Kolshians snatched on their way from Milo, and apparently dropped off part of the way to Kalqua. I was alarmed to see that the rodents acted petrified. Upon sighting the humans, it didn't bode well for how Slanek had endured re-education. Slanek was much closer and fonder of Terrans than random civilians, even one selected for being troublemakers, I tried to reassure myself. He wouldn't crumble under pressure as easily. And I guess it's positive that these Dosser weren't ferried to Kalqua's battle, to be killed with the Kolshian ships. Multiple Dosser could be packed into the cells, though we didn't stop to coax or sedate them amid our panic. Tyler was single-minded in marching toward Slanek's alleged location, all but breathing down Maroney's neck as the chieftain stepped through a sealed partition. There were more holding areas, exactly like the ones we just passed, but less of these were occupied. My eyes widened with shock, even my friend, who hadn't wanted to pause for any other interruptions, skidded to a halt. The pensive visages staring back at us were humans, the more energetic ones pounded against the glass. I knew that the Kolshians got their tentacles on some Terrans, who were left behind at a Dosser maintenance station. However, since those poor primates had been rescued back when Marcel got dosed with the cure, I hadn't been sure what Maroney's meant by dabbling in human experiments. It would have been difficult to elope in a hurry with predators, given there was no evidence they were moved to the Dosser homeworld. Less than a dozen total Earthlings were in this ward, which led me to conclude a single Commonwealth vessel slipped off with them in tow after initial successes. The Shadow Caste must have been running the same cruel experiments here, adjacent to the ones in Milo's system. These humans had been languishing under Federation integration attempts, which must have entailed fundamental changes to their neurochemistry and behavior. The fact they weren't repulsed to see UN soldiers was a positive sign. It meant they hadn't been persuaded that Earth's government was backward and evil. I had never seen Terrans look this feeble, with thousand-yard stares and shaking hands a common trait among the victims. Was this the state the Kolshians would have left the entire human race in, had their original uplift succeeded? It reminded me of how I felt under the predator disease drugs. A spectator in my own body, with stimulating thoughts locked far out of reach. I knew what it was like to have your personality suppressed under a haze of medication, with no end to the dreary days in sight. There was no greater part of any sapient that could be ripped away than their sanctity of mind. Seeing 20 years of my own misery reflected in binocular eyes, it evoked a painful level of empathy. I hoped the UN could free them from both the mental and physical cages. What the fuck is this? Samantha spat, stomping her boot heel into Moroni's tail. The Kolshian chief's eyes widened with alarm. Don't hurt me. I definitely warned you about this. You're merely too aggressive, like the crocodile. We thought you could become more docile, prey-like, more than the orcs are. Our ambitions went beyond curing you. Do you have any idea what it's like, to be so medicated you can't feel anything? My hiss was low and ostensibly calm, though my tail lash betrayed my emotions. For me, it was all because people derided my race and my loved ones until I couldn't take it, with words that aren't dissimilar to what Sovlan says now. I was deemed too aggressive for snapping. I deserved it for being a primitive, just like their predators. What, pray, was your ambition with the yodel? To direct your culture along proper avenues. We gave you so many gifts, that you would have never seen in your lifetime without us. Sovlan flexed his claws, stepping between me and Moroni's. That's not the least bit true. I'm sorry, Onso. I didn't want to hurt you. I like you, I do, and the jabs turned into a game for me. I was just frustrated with Tyler and my therapist for harping on my language, and my thoughts, and it's so damn hard to change everything. I can't do anything right, so I pushed back in defiance. I know you're smarter and better than me at everything, and I feel quite outshone by you. You think I don't know you're jealous? It's fine. It's his fault, not yours, I growled. But that's also why I know your people didn't need the Federation for shit. The fake Kolshian culture was fine for me, without knowing everything they believed in being a lie, then it broke me. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. It was easier believing the lie, easier not knowing the Gojids were changed too. Moroni's, no gifts that you could have given the yodel would be worth the mental anguish and the millions of deaths that come with it. That's, Moroni's began. I'm not done. You admitted not too long ago that your legacy was decline and decay, and your purposeless society is worth nothing. Your caste was an ignorant bunch of idiots living in fear, who wanted everyone else to be the same. All of us have suffered as a direct result of your actions, Onso and I have that so thoroughly in common. Ossel and Sam lost their loved ones to you, and Tyler is only here because his friend was almost driven to suicide, by your cure and torture of Slanek. Do you understand that? Yes, but I just inherited. You did nothing to change it. You excused it and created your own fucking mishaps, and the smug aura has returned after only a moment's hint of remorse. So unless you want to apologize, I suggest you shut up and take us to Slanek, before I shove my claws somewhere you don't want me to shove them. Chief Moroni's withered beneath the Gojid's blistering scowl, and gestured to follow him in tail language. The humans might not have understood the exact words, but they could infer the meaning from Sovlan's reaction. While we proceeded to what was hopefully Slanek's locale, other Terrans said about liberating the cured test subjects, I knew what it would be like for the victims to cobble together the pieces of their mind. They were strong enough to find a way forward, but I didn't envy that journey. However, if the Venlil we were sent to rescue was no longer himself, I wasn't sure he could claw his way back. He'd been upset by his own personality before any of this, which led to him going off the deep end. The most insightful bit of information was about my Gojid comrade's state of mind. My ears angled toward Sovlin, weighing his unexpected, passionate defense of the Yodel. I had never believed he hated me, instead believing that he was long in the tooth and set in his ways, but I hadn't considered a deeper struggle than that. The raw agony he'd felt, every time he discussed losing his family, told me he'd suffered as much as I had, albeit in a different way. His purpose for pressing on, seeking vengeance in their names, was a lie. How could he cope with his entire world being exposed as a falsehood? To that old man, the humans' revelations against the conspiracy must have felt the same as it did to us Yodel, when aliens tampered with our entire belief system. The Federation mindset was as ingrained, and fundamental, as any sapient's identity, from Sovlin's perspective. Knowing how much guilt he felt over Slanek's predicament, I made a mental note to protect the Gojid, if the Venlil reacted poorly to his presence. Maronis had gloated that our Skalgan friend wouldn't be happy to see the humans, but I trusted the primates to subdue an herbivore who was burdened by reignited instincts. However, something told me that, if any of Slanek's anger still existed, Sovlin wouldn't fight back due to his sense of guilt. I readied myself as we entered a secluded room, complete with a projector and neurocranial instruments. The dark gray fur, and black tuft atop his forehead, was unmistakable, but I was instantly worried the Venlil we knew was gone. If the Kolshians had tinkered with his brain to such extensive lengths, the damage could be irreparable. There was an apathy to his sluggish movements that went beyond what we'd seen with the drugged humans, and his eyes looked like they struggled to take in the new visitors. However, once Slanek realized that binocular eyes were staring at him, he squealed, his limbs began shaking, more profusely than they had before. Tears matted his cheeks, though his gaze still looked empty and disoriented. The Venlil struggled to duck behind his bed, as his legs twitched like he wished to flee. Monster! Help! Slanek pleaded. I eased myself forward, signaling for Sovlin to stay where he was. Hi, Slanek. It's me, Onso. Do you remember me? I've never seen you before. But I know the H-humans brainwashed me, and I can't remember a lot of it. They fight the entire galaxy, I saw the war footage. Horrible things. Meat eaters. Made me kill people. They must have done the same to you. I don't want to go back. I'd rather die. Everything you're telling me is wrong, Slanek. This isn't you, you can feel that. You were very close friends with the humans, before the Kolshians scrambled your brain, and made you forget how they crippled the Venlil. I know that you were angry when that happened. Tyler tiptoed after me, with the biohazard mask covering his eyes. Slanek, we came to rescue you. You can come home now. You were part of the exchange program, you were there for the empathy tests. The Kolshians wanted to wipe us out, but you fought to protect Earth, you lived there. How can you not remember any of that? The Venlil didn't seem to be listening to a word Tyler said, shutting down at the sight of an approaching Terran. I flicked my ears at my exchange partner, warning him not to intervene. The blonde human seemed dejected by Slanek's condition, though I noticed him fiddling with his holopad. I took a cautious step toward the Venlil, resting a gentle paw on his shoulder. It was disheartening to find him in such a pitiful state. I wasn't sure the person Marcel and Tyler fought to save was salvageable. The Kolshians succeeded in making the poor guy believe humans were monsters, wiping his memories of their shared past altogether. He was worse off than his likely state during first contact. There was nothing left of the person we knew. We need to sedate him and take him to a hospital. There's no way to convince him humans aren't taking him off to be cattle again. The Kolshians broke him. What's the last thing you remember? I whispered. Slanek rocked back and forth. F family. Brother died, Arxer. It's all fuzzy. Hurts to search, not there. It's okay. You don't have to push yourself. I wish you did remember, but it's not your fault. We all will help you, no matter what. Last thing I remember, the H-humans landed to kill us all. Bunkers. Cold. Then, it's like IW was unconscious, but not. Fragments and whispers to grasp at, mostly a name. Someone who meant the world to me. Marcel, Tyler interjected, startling the Venlil. What did you do to Marcel? Slanek bellowed, fur sticking upright. It was the first moment he looked alert during this entire conversation. How do you know that name? You remember Marcel? Marcel is fine. He and I are very good friends, he's a great dude. You want to talk to him? Samantha raised a finger. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Me neither, Sovlin chimed in, keeping himself hidden behind Ossel and Sam. Marcel was beyond depressed when Slanek was captured. He's tired of life kicking him down. I can't predict how he'll react if Slanek rejects him. No. Please. Slanek wailed. Want to talk to Marcel? Miss Marcel. Tyler offered an apologetic shrug. Sorry guys, but I already called him, and he just picked up. Here. I retrieved the holopad from my exchange partner, to see a befuddled Marcel staring at the screen. Slanek leapt at me with disjointed motions, ripping the device out of my hands with desperation. His brief excitement deflated as he laid eyes on the human scarred face, though he didn't react with the repulsed fear he had to Tyler and Sam. The Venlil's ears twisted with confusion, and conflicting emotions rushed through his horizontal pupils. Captain Fraser, meanwhile, had watering eyes, and his face contorted with relief. The Terran soldier seemed unaware of how little his friend remembered. Slanek. I'm so happy you're okay, I'm sorry, sorrier than you can imagine, for what happened to you. Whatever they've done to you, it's over, you're safe. You can come home. Marcel gushed. Jency. Come here, hurry. Oh, thank you so much, Tyler, you're a real bro. Slanek pinned his ears back. You're human. Should be terrible. Why do I feel like I love you? What? Marcel's weepy smile faltered, and his pupils darted back and forth, searching Slanek's expression. His eyes darkened with realization. Oh. You don't remember me. It's because we loved each other. We were closer than blood brothers. We went through so much together, and there was nothing I wouldn't have done for you. If I could trade places and save you from your suffering, I would. I wish I was there, Slanek, to tell you that it's going to be okay. To protect you. Why are you in my house? Did you capture my mother? Jency, who'd just peeked into the frame, swooned with delight. Slanek, what nonsense are you on about? The last thing you told me before running off was to take care of Marcel, if I still loved you, and that he'd be a better son. I did what you asked, but you are my son. I was never looking for an upgrade. You have no idea how much it hurt T to lose another son. Marcel squeezed Jency's wrist. We're going to remind him who he is. It's okay. It'll be you, me, and Nulia. Oh, that's right, she'll be delighted to see Uncle Slanek. She, showed up on our doorstep. Lucy doesn't want the responsibility anymore. That's okay, because we can have our own family. It's not too late to make a new life. I want my old life. You're a predator, from a race of killers. I don't know you, Slanek mewled. But I know you. The fact that you remember me at all means they couldn't take what we had away from you. Here, look. I've kept these, I looked at them every day to think about you. Marcel held up a printed photograph, with frantic enthusiasm. It showed a grief-stricken Slanek, sitting beside the human's broken body in a hospital bed. You were there when I was almost killed. You saved my life, and nursed me back to health. Can't you see how much you cared? You didn't leave me, even when you could have had someone without baggage, or scars. Like I won't give up on you now. You look, starved there. I look, sad. That looks real. It is real. You were part of an exchange program between our species. I can show you all our chats. Hell, I'd be happy to have them again. Marcel flipped a series of pictures in quick succession, rushing to find evidence for Slanek. This is you being the first Venlil to visit Earth, standing with our leader. Oh, this is you with a can of potato chips, you can discover them all over again, salt monster. Here's us at the camp on the cradle. The cradle? It's a long story. We fought the orcs time and again, together, we were unstoppable. I'll tell you everything we went through, the good and the bad, and what really happened, with proof, not what the Kolshians said. I wish I could do so much over. But as long as you remember the slightest bit of what we were, we can get through this. Do you believe me? My brain doesn't, but my heart does. I believe you. Only you. I'm so proud of you, Slanek. Our memories might be gone for you, but nobody can take what we had. Those nice people are my friends, your friends, and they flew across the galaxy to bring you home. I need you to go with them, and I'll be here waiting, huh? You need anything, you call. I'll be as patient and supporting as you need. Okay, but they're scary. I think I'll go with the yodel. Yes, go with the yodel. No time like the present. One foot in front of the other, and you'll be home in no time. Talk more. Not ready. Want to know everything. We can talk for as long as you want once you're safe on their ship. That's all that matters. Please, be brave, for Jensi and I. I'll be in touch very soon. Slanek's shoulders sagged as Marcel disconnected from the call. I gently pried the holopad out of his paws, and returned it to Tyler. The blonde primate gave me the slightest nod, gratitude for seeing our mission fulfilled. It was more than I expected, to see any trace of the Venlil's old self still kicking. After sticking with my buddy through a ferocious fight, we could finally leave this rock, and return to a normal life. The galaxy could have a fresh start, just like Slanek, with humanity at the reins. All of us would be returning home to a new era led by the United Nations. I wrapped my paw around Slanek's shoulders, and coaxed him toward the exit before he had second thoughts. Sovlan sported an expression of visible relief, after how responsive the Venlil had been to Marcel. The Gojid caught me observing him, and gave me a grudging claw flick of respect. I returned the gesture with my ears, musing what kind of future the old man would have. It was then I noticed him guiding Ossel, with fatherly affection. It was clear he intended to bring Risel's sister back to Earth, where Vizith and Hunter waited. The former captain might have figured out what to do with himself more than he thought. With the last part of our mission complete, it was time for us to seek out new lives in well-earned peacetime. Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter Isif, Arxer Rebellion Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, April 6, 2137. After devoting hundreds of thousands of ships to the Kolshian cause, then having a large portion of those vessels turned against Betterment's mandate, Gizno's regime had all but collapsed as soon as humanity won. That selfish despot only wanted to save his own hide. At the end of the day, after an offer of exile to an uninhabited moon, he handed over his command to the rebellion without a fight. At this point, following the changes in allegiance mid-battle, we'd had numbers on our side. I would have liked to see Prophet Lasnell's line brought to an immediate end, but I'd settle for avoiding further losses. My return to Riss as the presumed leader would be the first time I'd been there in years, since I'd been stationed all the way out by Skalga. The future of the orcs wouldn't be as sapient-eating monsters, beholden to basic needs and aspiring to cruelty. Assuming Secretary-General Zhao could persuade the sapient coalition to leave us be, during the upcoming convention to write the Treaty of Seoul, we could start rebuilding our society into its former self. I wished at a time like this that Vizith hadn't turned her back on her people. A soldier from the long-gone Morvam Charter could be a leading voice in defending defectiveness. It would be an arduous battle stretching decades to convince my people that empathy was not weakness, especially since sociopathic tendencies had been bred into our bloodlines. There will be the issue of challenges from those who see me as weak. I need to consolidate my allies, including the unsavory chief hunters I turned. The United Nations promised to get Uslif and Ilthus to stand down, though given their lust for power, I can't imagine how. I wished that I could be a part of the Sapient Coalition's activities, but the prey races weren't ready for diplomatic contact with the Orcs. These deep wounds would take generations to heal. There was nothing I could offer that would atone for my complicity, every atrocity I committed to survive. Forgiveness would never be something I deserved, for all my efforts to bring about a new dawn. Humanity had escaped the label of monstrous predators, yet obligate carnivores with our past wouldn't be immune to judgment. Felra was an unmerited blessing, the only friend I ever had, and my only outlet for my suppressed emotions. While the Dosur didn't belong in strategy meetings, I hoped to consult with her on sentimental matters, in Vizitha's role. Hey scifi. How'd your conversation with Zhao go? Felra's message came through in an instant, across the reinstated FTL networks. I know you're going to be a great leader. You have such a big heart. I tapped my claws against the keypad. Zhao needs to handle Uslif and Ilthus before we talk. Those two wanted a larger role, despite the obsolescence of their methodology. We cannot afford coups, infighting, and power grabs, yes? With you finding a way to feed them and not killing lots of people, I think you'll be well received. You just need to promise greatness in a way that's not keeping cattle. You did the right thing by forcing Gizznal to free all sapient captives, before he left. The lab-grown meat will be fine, you know, Arxer can try beef jerky now. That is not real meat, you silly rodent. You cannot even tell that human meat is meat by looking at it, because it is so processed and unnatural. That is not a dietary practice befitting a hunter. Maybe you don't realize the Greys do things boringly, Felra fired back. I'm serious, scifi, your culture needs to be more fun. Fun is part of expressing yourself. I question the validity of any advice coming from you. But you'll still listen to me, because I'm that much fun. What would you do without me? Practice your sulking expression in the mirror? Humph. I do not have to listen to your babbling. I can turn off the holopad. You don't want to do that. You must be lonely, not having Oleg and Lisa around anymore. I am not lonely, I am relieved star. No more spies and conspiracy theories. I feel bad for that poor adopted human on Skalga, who'll have to deal with Oleg's derangement again. And I'm sure you'll see enough of Lisa to tell me things I don't care about, since she transferred to Liberty's Bastion star. I know. The coffee shop has been set in motion. Actually, I told her to put a drink on the menu called the scifi. She can use food coloring to make it gray, and draw a big heart shape with the cream. I thoroughly despise you. Never contact me on this app again, Felra. Right, sure. Always so grumpy. I am not grumpy, I am just tired of you. Enjoy this, because it's the last time I'll ever respond to your messages. Okay then. Talk to you tomorrow. I considered deleting the SwiftPair app after the latest exchange with Felra, but settled for burying the holopad in its drawer with an exasperated tail lash. If that Dosur was the best candidate to steer us down an emotional awakening, perhaps it was better if we kept our single-minded focus on war. I didn't want to be anything like that. Hopefully, the Secretary General's message, arriving any minute, would offer better prospects for the Arxers' future. Unifying my people under a novel purpose was my mission, and that meant I needed rival chief hunters mollified. I intended to ditch the authoritarian name, Dominion, during my rule, and to lay the groundwork for a new method of government, one where the rights spelled out in the sapient coalition's founding documents were mirrored for our citizens. The herbivores needed to be convinced we didn't deserve extinction, and showing them intended reforms might give Zhao something to work with. I believed that humanity would fulfill their end of the bargain, that promise to aid the rebellion following the Kolshan's fall. That might not be by sending their fleet, after Giznel's pathetic surrender, but staying the guns of their allies would be its own fight. My claw was hovering over the comm screen, and I swiped to accept when Zhao phoned. "Greetings, Mr. Secretary General. From your relaxed expression, I gather that your discourse with Ilthus and Uslif went well?" It did. They were given roles as chief generals, a fancy way of saying military advisors, and told that they'd need to prove themselves willing to play by humanity's rules before we'd back their leadership. That you have seniority, and showed your strength the best at AFA. We framed it as a promotion, higher than the single sector they had before, the black-haired human replied, a subtle grin on his lips. I assume that you have the officers who defected from the start under your control. They were already willing to follow you. There's an understanding, Kaisal chimed in, from where he'd been pretending not to notice my discourse with Felra. We're withdrawing from the sectors like you asked, now that the cattle are released and the raids will stop. A few of the defectives will spearhead new colonies, for the suddenly returning soldiers. Others will take regional roles as governors. The more self-serving parties have been relegated to military training. I narrowed my eyes. Yes. I suspect the sapient coalition will call for us to unconditionally rid ourselves of our military capacity, but I will not agree to that. We must be able to defend ourselves, should some prey take the initiative to try to wipe us out. Also, if I acquiesce to such demands, my leadership will be viewed as weak, and doomed. I'm confident that I can bargain for you to be left to your own devices, as long as you agree to isolation within RIS 20 light-year bubble. It'll take some convincing, but after everything you've done for humanity, I promise not to undermine your future. I believe you can be an instrument, to build something better. The United Nations will be here to offer guidance, as well as to help you navigate budding diplomatic relations, every step of the way. I suppose that you've heard that the Yodel offered us an embassy. I hope I did not cause offense, but I have not accepted the offer. It seems unwise for herbivores to reside on RIS at this time, especially for if, I cannot guarantee that diplomats wouldn't become dinner. That's why the Yodel extended that offer prior to the UN, though it's amusing that they beat us to the punch. Isif, we recognize the extraordinary complications that you find yourself with, you need time to sort your affairs out. We'll conduct relations virtually and directly, until you have time to train a corps of diplomatic intermediaries, who can be sensitive to other races' customs. I suggest you respond to the technocracy's offer with, "Not yet." I will. At least that means you already have one vote against wiping us out. 2. Ambassador Tarva will advocate for you. I trust we can pressure Veln into giving her some independence, for the treaty votes. I cannot believe that the governor lost her seat of power. She was a formidable ally on the side of humanity. Don't discount Tarva, because she still is. Her choice of speakers and testimony about the Venlol's suffering was instrumental in getting the votes for gene reversal programs, including the one for omnivores. She's a woman of conviction, regardless of who is on her side. It was my firm belief that Venlol were weak, until I saw the decisions she made on my behalf and yours. You were quite lucky, out of all those indoctrinated squealers, that first contact was with someone so fortuitous. I'm sure Kaisal would seethe to learn how much I respect Tarva. The scrawny Arxer lashed his tail. I do not always agree with Isif's inclusion of weaklings, but if defectiveness saves us from living as we do now, I will back it. I do not have full trust in you humans, due to your tendency to forsake us. Twice, you rebuffed my attempts to defect to Earth, yet now, I have a life away from war. Acting as ISIF's second, I seek peace and satiety. 4. People of my stature not to be tormented. After the pure disdain Kaisal showed when first introduced to my social, empathetic companions, it was a relief that he'd come around to backing my cause. He was a solid representation of the average anti-betterment rebel. There would be many Arxer citizens who carried resentment, or who continued practices that humanity would view as uncivilized. Gradual progress was all that I could hope for. Tarva served as a cautionary tale of how a populace could reject sharp changes in a short time frame. The fact that the average denizen would have the option to push back against demands from on high, and an accurate accounting of what happened in their government, would improve on Dominion policy. There'll still need to be enforcement of the rule of law. We need to expedite the building of meat factories, and acquisition of non-sapient livestock, to guarantee that. Secretary-General Zhao clasped his hands together. Well, I don't expect any serious hiccups at tomorrow's summit. You have the support of your people, judging by Kaisel's attitude. After their showing at Alpha, I don't expect the betterment archetypes to go against the grain. Congratulations, ISIF, on your new role and your bright future. It's been a long time coming, you risked your hide to earn it. I look forward to diplomatic relations between our planets in quiet times. Wait, Mingza. As a final matter, I seek your opinion on my new government's nomenclature, replacing the harsh tyranny associated with the old one. Dominion should be lost to time, I said. The Arxer Collective is my idea. I thought it a suitable name, yes. The Arxer Collective. It's a daring premise to live up to, but it does have a nice ring to it. It evokes that hope, that your people can work in altruistic cooperation and care for each other once more. One for all. Everything I do will be for the good of the people. What do you humans say? Lead by example? It's the only way to lead and stand for something. You seem to have discovered your emotional side just fine, without any prehistoric Arxer as a lighthouse. I'm proud to have worked alongside you, ISIF. You proved me very wrong about your people. You proved me right about yours. Thank you for sticking up for us, after we have done our part. And thank you for defeating the conspiratorial tyrants that perpetuated this war. We couldn't have done it without you, ISIF. Your fortitude and compassion has saved countless lives, both today and in generations to come. Take care of yourself out there. Enacting lasting change, that'll be a fight we'll tackle for years to come. Our patience may be tested, but the end result is worth the tiring journey. Risk is free, that alone makes every risk I've taken worth it. If no future Arxer will endure the shame I feel, for every meal I've eaten and crime I've sown, then I will fight until my dying breath. I hope you know you've succeeded Meyer's wisdom with more grace and intellect than Earth could have hoped for. Farewell, Secretary-General Zhao. Good luck, my friend. I terminated the video call, allowing him to return to planning for a busy session of post-war decisions. Kaisal turned his binocular eyes to the viewport, with the glint I finally recognized as homesickness vanishing. The reds of Riss clay masses, and the greens of forests and plains, stretched out on the viewport. I was optimistic, as we prepared for the landing that would start my reign. Though Felra would be far away, I wouldn't be alone among my people. Kaisal would require continued mentoring, and I could form a social network within the collective's fledgling bureaucracy. There was no longer an entity standing in the way of progress. The greatest benefit to Betterment's fall was that I wouldn't have to hide my true persona beneath a horrific farce any longer. This is home. It can be a place worth saving, worth fighting for. My life can be spent in pursuit of something good, not just with the purpose of staving off execution. The arrival of a second sapient predator had been the catalyst for the liberation of my entire people. Without humanity, I would have had no empathetic sapients to reach out to who would have seen me as a person. I would have had no frame of reference for what a dignified society would look like, apart from Betterment and the Federation. I would have never known that the two galactic powers were colluding to our detriment, and would have never been connected with the Yodel or the Venlil, a pair of herbivores who could act with cordiality, despite my species. This war couldn't have been won if I hadn't saved Earth from annihilation, and trusted them to defy the odds at Alpha. Every encouraging moment led back to the Terrans, and our partnership to actualize a shared vision of the future. It might take decades for the wounds on all sides to heal, in any meaningful way, but the cycles of hatred could begin to dissolve today. The humans had given me hope for peace and friendship, and with Riss under my control, I never planned to let it go. Memory transcription subject, Ambassador Tarva of the Venlil Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, April 7, 2137. The past few weeks had been packed with important events, falling alongside the stunning victory at Alpha. With the prototype cure set to be injected into my veins, Noah and I had taken the opportunity to visit Earth after the Skalga referendum. Both of his parents were deceased, but he introduced me to a few of his surviving relatives, an aunt, a second cousin, and a cousin-in-law. Culture in his part of the world was centered on the nuclear family, rather than extended, but everyone I spoke to was proud to be related to an astronaut with such a sterling reputation. We were given a private tour of NASA headquarters, the organization responsible for our meeting. The evening was complete with the promised watching the alien sunset in a hammock, and dining with otherworldly food. I had been quite impressed with Earth's resilience, and was received warmly by the locals. One comment from a stranger about me being one of the good ones confused me, but other than that, I was treated with reverence. To think I'd ever been frightened of these predators, or worried about visiting the homeworld where their numbers were billions. Their enterprising culture was intoxicating, with contrasting places across the globe that could inspire our children. I wondered if Skalga could have cultivated such differences, without the Federation's mellowing. Maybe we still could, with time to shake off their interference. When it was time to stand before my people, as the first to accept a human-engineered serum, I had been ready. There were no adverse effects that I noticed, as Governor Velm applauded my courage and renounced the Federation. For all the supposed risks, it hadn't been worth fretting. Every blood test showed that the counter-edits had taken well, and that everything was as the science predicted. It was a matter of waiting for the next candidates to go through the process, though it was difficult to be patient. When a human scientist reached out to me about locating a donor, I couldn't rush down there quickly enough. However much I'd failed my first daughter, I was stronger now than before, and I knew Noah would protect our children with his life, too. We were taking the initial steps to transforming the Venlil back into a fearsome, unyielding race. Now that I'm expecting a child, Noah has been all but falling over himself to help me. He's trying to do everything for me. It's like he thinks I'll break at a gust of wind. We still have 6 months to go. The astronaut smiled softly at me, while wrapping his arm around my shoulders. The Treaty of Soul, signed unconditionally by Chief Maroney's, before we ever penned the terms. How do you feel, trying to bring about lasting peace? All I ever wanted was for you to have the right to exist. I want the same for us now. I know there's still a lot of work to be done, picking up the pieces of the Federation, an organization that stood centuries. Humanity needs to find a path for your era to last just as long. So many complications, parties, and old wounds that could impede progress, I answered. We've made it this far, and don't forget, we're persistence predators. We will dedicate ourselves to this role, as mediators, for as long as it takes. There's so much reason for hope. Herbivores cohabitating with humans beyond even Skalga. Earth, staving off extinction time and again, against all odds. Truth and reason prevailing over fear and ignorance, despite the fact it took centuries. The Durerton shield showing up to our treaty signing. You and I, throwing off the Federation's influence with our lovely family. You're right. I am surprised to see Ambassador Koji, looking all repentant. Hopefully, she won't make us regret delaying these proceedings until her faction arrived. The Durerton shield might have used a lot of their bombs in the battle, but they still have ships in orbit. We've been able to stall for a while, under our claim that we're doing a thorough job thumbing through prisoners, shadow caste citizens, information, and asylum seekers alike. However, with food dwindling and no supply chain, they won't wait much longer for the green light. We need to sort out what we do with Alpha as the first item on our list. After what happened to CapCut, I don't know how Zhao plans to talk them down. I'd hate for humanity to shoot the Durerton ships, just when we're finally making progress. We don't need more enemies, let's hope it won't come to that. I think we're going to find out the Secretary General's plans now. Noah hovered beside me at the Venlil station, and his brown eyes turned to the podium. Zhao was mounting the stage with methodical footsteps. The borrowed tradition of applause greeted him, this time with rousing fervor. The sapient coalition members chose to stand beside humanity, despite the mismatch on paper, and were thrilled that we had come out on top. Earth's cunning, daring efforts were both appreciated and respected, so it went unquestioned that the United Nations was taking charge in these proceedings. If these diplomats were told a year ago that they'd be delighted at the fall of the Federation, by the hands of new predators, it would have been unthinkable. I felt pride to be sitting among an array of species, with peers who could devote ourselves to peace without interference. My choice to befriend humanity will save trillions of future lives, and liberate the galaxy from tampering and oppression. Perhaps there were things we could have done better, sacrifices we wish we didn't have to make, but I wouldn't abandon the Terrans for the universe. Zhao raised his hands in a humble gesture, as the praise continued. Thank you for the warm welcome, friends. As you all know, Kolshan tyranny is no more, with the karmic resolution of the Battle of Alpha. While this meeting is about progress, and how we move forward to better days, I'd like to take a moment to look back at all that we've lost. Recent revelations showed how easy it is to rewrite history. We have a mandate to learn from the past, even with its darkest moments. Let us have a moment of silence for the innocent lives lost on Earth, and every other world that suffered from raiders, Nishtal, the Cradle, CapCut, and many others throughout the centuries. The chamber fell into a hushed silence, with many diplomats recalling a loved one taken as cattle and attacks on several worlds. I recalled what it was like to decide to pull the life support on my daughter, and the looks in the humans' eyes at Earth's memorial service, before the bomb that removed my tail. Noah placed a hand atop my prosthetic, as it tightened around his wrist. The choked quietness was broken only by the occasional cough and sniffle. There was a collective weight to the loss, with all of us gathered there. When the Secretary General deigned to break the silence, it was a merciful reprieve from those heavy emotions. So much senseless slaughter, just in the short time we've been an active force in space. It is why the items on my agenda are all related to dealing with our enemies, active and subdued, then followed by establishing protocols for diplomacy with powers outside our circle. There will be plenty of time for us to find our footing, and sort out what kind of organization the SC will be. My sole demand inside our borders is a simple one, anyway, that the sapient rights document all of you sign is applied, unequivocally, to humans. I want to trust in the safety of our citizens traveling abroad, as we attempt to integrate and spread out, Zhao said. Gojid Minister Kiri chewed at her claws. Despite my repeated directives, it's difficult to get the exterminators in line. With only a few colonies left, the Gojidi Union is in tatters. You have my word that we're cracking down on bigotry, and punishing offenders. It would be remiss not to mention that it'll take time to normalize human residents. I understand that you cannot eliminate all anti-predator radicals. I simply ask for a zero-tolerance policy, and for your best efforts to weed out physical mistreatment of humans. I'll discuss this more at our internal meeting, next week, but the United Nations wishes to open embassies on all SC worlds, and for you to open annexes on our soil as well. We will dedicate entire teams to learning your cultures and strengthening relations, but the same respect will be needed from you, as our partners. Nuela, from the Crocodile delegation, raised a tentative wing. While more Crocodile side with my separatist movement by the day, the traditional government still contests our power. I'm not sure it would be wise to grant you an embassy on one of our colonies. Humanity has plans to implement you as the singular crocodile faction, and back your government in the necessary ways. However, I believe that falls outside the scope of today's discussion. I'll be happy to address individual concerns at length next time. For now, let us focus on the fallout of this war, and what we'll do with our enemies. It's important to me that we don't preside over senseless loss of life, and that we make assurances to draw surrenders from the 200-plus Federation subsidiaries. I seek the war's end, so that humanity can live at peace, so that none of us have to lose more lives. It's why reducing cities on Alpha to ash is an unacceptable outcome. You're trying to stop us from finishing what we came to Alpha for, after we upheld our end of the bargain? Ambassador Koji squawked. I helped delay for the sake of your investigation, and now, you're changing our agreement. We have a proposal that we believe fulfills our agreement, while sparing those who had no say or role in Calqua's attack. We've rounded up the millions of Shadow Caste members, and transported them painstakingly to a habitable exoplanet in an unclaimed system. We'll transfer them into the Shield's custody, no questions asked, in exchange for Alpha being spared. Whatever it is you want to do to the people responsible, that's at your discretion. This is much more efficient and accurate than dropping what bombs you have left on civilians. It is justice against the perpetrators. What do you think? In those shiplog recordings, you said that you would hunt every conspirator down. That the bombs would miss the people responsible, who were hiding underground. I suppose this arrangement is suitable, but I don't want the entire Kolshan race to be roaming the stars like they did nothing. And what about their colonies? Chief Maroney's relayed orders for them to stand down, and self-destruct any remaining ships. We surveyed the colonies through extensive scans, for any hideouts or suspicious activity. You all heard the Chief's faulty rationale about predator disease. On our videos, we can combat his misinformation, now that we have the truth. Each of your offices should have received an extensive packet of research about prion diseases that exist on Earth, as well as their modes of transmission and behavior. With their purpose invalidated, the Commonwealth are nothing. They will be sequestered and surveilled for some time. Zerulean Prime Minister Braylon tilted his head. Have you acquired any of these prion for the Galactic Institute of Medicine to study, and confirm your findings? Why did the Kolshans never discover the infectious agent, despite years of study? I believe it's near impossible that we'll find anything. To our knowledge, prion can only survive for a few years in soil and water. It's been centuries. Contaminated grounds were isolated, and the water was treated with strict enough conditions to eliminate the proteins. Ironically enough, sustained high temperatures are the only way we know to kill those things. By burning the corpses, the Kolshans killed the microbes, and by the time they had the means to detect the cause, they'd succeeded in eradicating it. Now, are there any objections to our plans for Alpha? How long do you intend for them to be surveilled? The Thafki ambassador piped up. Years. We'll install a rebel government that operates under UN authority. Perhaps every half-decade, they'll be up for parole. We can evaluate their societal transformation. Regardless of if they're allowed to engage in some capacity, they won't have a fleet as long as this war is in living memory. The Kolshans need to prove their species' good intentions, to atone for an era. The Secretary General's eyes roved over the crowd, searching for any further objections. Punitive actions against the Shadow Fleet would be a start. I hope the Durerton rendered agony upon all of the conspirators. I wish the Terrans had handed over the Farsal elders they'd taken hostage, so that their trial would be a bit less civilized, for everything they'd done to Species 45G. It was ironic that the humans and the Venlil were both above average on aggression and emotionality, like our neighboring planets had evolved to be the closest pals. As much as they wanted to mend bridges, I hoped the Predators would take the gravity of our injuries into consideration. Skalga would need an adequate plan spelled out for all hostile parties, especially for how Talsk would be handled. Locking the Farsal homeworld in a Kessler cage was an impenetrable imprisonment, but if we can fully finish this war with the Treaty of Soul, there needs to be a long-term solution. They should be sequestered for just as long as the Kolshians, with their role of deciding how to alter other races. Historians and archaeologists, my ass. Zhao smiled, unmasked in this speech. I'm happy we could reach an accord, Ambassador Koji. I'm saving talks about most neutral parties for later, but I'd like to continue our military alliance with the Durertan Shield, a full-fledged mutual pact. While the handling of non-aggressors was the last item on my agenda, let me spare a moment to say humanity doesn't extend our embassy plan just to the sapient coalition. We'd like embassies on every shield world, and for your parties to come to Earth. Our relations don't need to be so frosty. We wish to remain separate entities from the coalition, rather than to join you. However, opening our doors to human diplomats should be acceptable, Koji answered. Excellent. I'm grateful for every friend we can find in the stars. It's a shame that there is a long list of parties who've aggrieved us, siding with the Federation. The top of the list, as I'm sure the listeners are waiting for me to get to, is the Farsal. We were unable to devote the manpower to an occupation of Talsk, and that remains true, even after the war ends. What we must do is monitor them, to ensure they don't build anything, and we can't do that without any ship traffic or sensor contact. The blockade must come down. I lashed my tail in irritation. The Venlo Republic wishes for the species who crippled us to remain in isolation. Unlike the Kolshians, the Farsal civilians had an idea of what was going on. Founders' Day, a festival where they sold our artifacts back to us, was a community effort. It's a glaring example of the rot at their heart. Respectfully, I don't see a reason why we'd let any of them out, anytime soon. There were a few murmurs of agreement from the gathered diplomats. Noah knitted his brows together beside me, seemingly worried by me putting a voice to my government's position of vengeance. While it was Veln's official stance that the Farsal's alterations were monstrous, it was obvious I agreed with the idea that our cripplers couldn't get off lightly. Human compassion was something I adored about them, but with an issue this personal, I felt obligated to demand justice. How many years had the Venlil been mocked as the galaxy's weakest species? How many children, like my daughter, had died or been captured, because our paws were tied behind our back? With our natural temperament, we could have fought back against the Arxer. The Secretary-General's lips twitched with sympathy. I was there when we told you about our findings at the archives, Ambassador. Our hearts go out to the Venlil for what was done to you. I reiterate that we do not seek more loss of life, so unless we plan to glass them, we need to attack their ideology. To show them the error of their ways. Keeping Talsk totally cut off, as a form of collective punishment, will serve to radicalize civilians. We won't change hearts and minds like that. We won't rid their planet of Federation methods and propaganda, so this system will live on. Where was the resistance on Talsk? I fired back. You can't rid them of something with no pushback. This isn't about innocent people. You're right. The Farsal aren't innocent, not most of them. They don't realize they're doing anything wrong. But if there's one person, maybe a child, that's innocent, then it's worth it to try to fix it. None of this will be easy, since change and healing take years, decades. I know it's not easy to think of ever forgiving a wound as grave as what was inflicted on your species, just as we still feel rage for Earth. This is about the big picture, for our children and our children's children. Mr. Secretary General, I'm more willing to tolerate the very Arxer who ordered the raid than these monsters. I want my children to have a bright future, but I cannot forget what was taken from us. The Venlil, and every other species who've had their lives turned upside down, cannot. And you should not. Rest assured, we are not just letting the Farsal back into the galaxy, any more than the Kolshians. I propose the same parole system, and without reformation, they will never touch the galaxy again. We'll engineer one lane in and out, which will allow us to monitor that they're not building any weapons to disintegrate the cage from the ground. Any traffic will require UN approval, a stringent process reserved for asylum seekers and any needed supplies. I agree that they've lost the right to be a part of our community in this generation. I'm just proposing an action for a far-off day they earn it back. I stewed over the Terran leader's words for several seconds, sensing the gazes of every diplomat on me. The sapient coalition didn't back humanity's decision not to bomb certain worlds, though they went along with it. There was a great deal of anger over centuries of oppression. My mind harkened back to how I'd told Chief Hunter Isif that I could never forgive him for what he'd done, even if I recognized that he was the best bet toward peace. Elias Meyer had offered a dying wish of peace between me and the Arxer, and I'd been moved by it. I could appreciate that Zhao had a similar desire for us to find a way to move forward with the Farsal. What did Zhao say back at the summit? Humanity is willing to give everything of ourselves for peace? If these sweet predators say that, after everything they've suffered, how can I be a true friend to them without doing the same? Noah leaned down, whispering in my ear. The Farsal don't hold power over us anymore. Our children will have everything they took from us, and more. We are going to have a beautiful life. I trust you, Tarva, to do the right thing, even when it isn't easy. Even when your entire world won't agree. This is different from trusting a predator race. It's harder. My heart was tight with sorrow, as I answered my beloved in a hushed tone. It was about more than doing a moral, yet unpopular, deed. It was trusting humanity, one final time, to act in our best interests. I want you to have the peace and harmony you desire. If I believe the Arxer can change, I guess the Farsal deserve the same chance. I know you'll never let anything happen like that to us again. We'll be your guardians. There will be nothing stronger than our love and our kindness together. You can count on that. I know, Noah. Tears welled in my eyes, as I straightened up to give Zhao an answer. The Venlo Republic would like personal updates from the UN on all matters regarding the Farsal's handling. I ask for this as a personal favor, though I will put aside my own feelings either way. The Secretary-General ducked his head. With how much the Venlo have been affected, that's a fair request. We'll see that you're kept in the loop. Thank you for working with us here. I can see that emotions are, understandably, running high, so I suggest we take a 10-minute recess, and clear our minds before tackling the back half of our agenda. We'll reconvene for the rest of the items then. Chatter rose up as soon as the Predator stepped back from the microphone. Noah was staring at me with a mix of pride, and also concern, perhaps that my stress levels would affect the baby. I allowed him to guide me out of the room. His hands grabbed a tissue from a table, and he dabbed at my eyes lightly. There was a question swirling in his pupils, even while he focused on comforting me. I made a mental note to ask him what was on his mind later. For now, my focus needed to be on keeping my composure, and engaging with the final aspects of our peacetime accord. Humanity could count on my cooperation, as well as my unwavering attention, as they sought to wrap up the treaty convention. Memory transcription subject, Ambassador Tarva of the Venlo Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, April 7, 2137. As I turned to stroll back into the auditorium for Zhao's resumption, I noticed that Noah hadn't followed me. Immediate concern blossomed in my heart, knowing how unusual that was. Ever since I'd begun my pregnancy, the astronaut had stuck close to me, like I was a fragile object that might fall apart, if left unattended. Mere moments before, the former Ambassador Williams had been comforting me after the Farsal topic stirred up my sorrow for my species. Was the human having sudden medical complications? I whirled around to check on him, and found that the Predator had inexplicably lost his footing. Noah was hunched over on one knee, extending a velvet box in his hands. His binocular eyes peered up at me with love and sincerity. He popped open the container to reveal a metal band, with a sparkling gemstone atop it. I tilted my head in confusion, not understanding what the Predator was up to. Was this some Terran ritual I was unfamiliar with? Despite my lack of recognition, I could sense the charged aura of emotion between us. The astronaut's lips curved upward, as he gave voice to the unspoken question that had been in his mind. Tarva, nobody has ever made me feel as complete and sure-footed as you. You are my world, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? The human rumbled. What? The tears that had been spilling from sorrow renewed, but this time, it was from an overpowering deluge of love. It seemed this was a tradition for how the predators proposed to their loved ones. Noah wanted a commitment, to uphold our relationship until our final days. Yes. Yes. I can't wait to start a family together, as husband and wife. The human rose and clasped my wrist with a gentle hand, before carefully sliding the ring onto my toe. It felt a bit strange and tight, but it must be some sort of symbol of commitment. I'd seen humans wearing similar objects before, and come to think of it, all of them were in long-term relationships. We hadn't talked about marriage rituals between our two species at all, though I was sure we'd have plenty of time to plan and mingle our traditions. When my ex-husband proposed to me many years ago, it was with the storied tale signs of "Marry Me." The ceremony was our traditional fusion of the families, where relatives and friends symbolically swapped sides between bride and groom. I commit to this union, two souls merging as one. The goals of the other are my goals, and their desires are my desires. I will stoke the fires of love in rain and sunshine, I will rebuild it from ashes or cinders. For the remainder of our lives, we will move forward together, the Venlil vows read. I hadn't fulfilled the letter of my first promise, after the devastation of our daughter's death made it impossible to spark anything from the ashes. With Noah, I believed I had a chance to start again, to live up to those vows. It would be not just the merging of souls, but the merging of two cultures. I intended to integrate Terran customs with Venlil rites. The words should amount to supporting my human through both hardships and good times. Together, after all we'd been through since first contact, I knew we could make it through anything. I'll tell you all about our traditional weddings, we can swap stories, so that we're clear what marriage means between us, Noah growled. For now, we need to get back to the meeting. I just couldn't wait a second longer to ask you. I nuzzled up to his side, as we ambled back to the auditorium. Unless your weddings are solitary affairs, we definitely need to think of a guest list. Family, friends, and people we've worked closely with. Yeah, I'd like to limit it to those close to us. Just don't ask Glim. I wish him well, and I've directed him to get help, but he made it personal by selling us out. I know he thinks we betrayed him first by letting Isif speak, and he's a very traumatized man, but he spat on our love. I don't want to work with him, and I certainly don't want him at our wedding. I agree, what he did burned bridges between us. I imagine that means, just for appearances, we should make sure Sarah Rosario doesn't bring Heisei. Sarah belongs at our wedding, and I'm happy that she and Heisei have stayed close, but besides not sticking it to Glim, we don't want anyone there who might diss predator traditions. That means we're definitely not inviting Koji, regardless of how much she's changed. Why not? I think it'd be hilarious for her to cut you off at each word of our vows. Hilarious is one word to describe it. I can think of another, but it's not very diplomatic. Anyway, it looks like Zhao's about ready to resume his speech, so we can hammer out every detail on the ride back to Skalga. I'm right here, if you need any support over the Farsal or the war, just reach out, and don't overexert yourself. Please. I'll control my stress levels, for the baby. And yourself. And myself. Don't worry, Noah, I'm fine. The astronaut steadied my chair as I sat back down, while I tried to focus on the Secretary General despite my giddiness and excitement. There were serious matters to attend to, and I couldn't afford to be distracted. However, the prospect of marrying my soulmate had caused my earlier pain over the Farsal discussions to evaporate. I was ready to tackle difficult subjects with a clear mind, and to iron out the final details of peacetime. Whatever put an end to the war and the death, with humanity ushering in a harmonious era, I could live with it. What's left for Zhao to discuss, aside from the 200 Federation powers? The Dominion? I wonder how ISIF's rebellion has held up, and whether humanity finds it appropriate for the Arxer to be punished at all for their unthinkable cattle farms. The Secretary-General's eyes swept across the room, ensuring every diplomat had time to filter back in. All right then. Before I fully move past the farcical issue, I want to raise two topics I intended to broach in our internal meetings, to emphasize that we hate our friends' suffering, and that we intend to address every issue discovered from the archives. You know about the gene reversals, but we haven't gone over our Project Chronicle. In short, we're recruiting historians to sort the data from each species chamber. Only human historians? Lalo, the Yodel ambassador, called out with suspicion. I trust your people, but I don't want more aliens handling our history. Respectfully. Of course, and at our internal meeting, we'll be discussing what each individual race sees as important and wants in their curricula. We'll be requesting professionals from your planets to work with us, and ensure that everything is fair and above board. What we've started on is incentivizing some archivist prisoners to help us, and large-scale sorting. I intend to involve each of you in your own stories. Humanity's commitment is to undoing not just the gene mods, but every lie they've ever told you. Please understand that. I flicked my ears, recognizing that Zhao was addressing me. I do, and I'm grateful for your efforts to expose the conspiracy for all of their crimes against sapients. Truly. They won't control us. They won't be out abducting potential uplifts either. I recognize that some member states have welcomed back citizens from the past, who could be helpful with Project Chronicle. I recommend using them as windows to a lost era, but also setting out provisions to address their unique circumstances. We recognize both the benefits and the dangers of advanced cryotechnology, and intend to discuss laws on cryopod usage next week. We take what they've done quite seriously. Mazik President Cupo flared his trunk. Then destroy the technology. Nothing good can come of preserving sapients like frozen fruit, for hundreds of years. A few calls of assent came from the gathered diplomats, and I found myself wondering if Cupo was right. The abductees who'd been transported into our time had difficulty adjusting, and lost their lives and their families. There were zero positives to rendering people obsolete on their own worlds. Cryopods would facilitate similar experiments done by anyone who bought into Federation ideology, and tried to reinstitute the cure on live subjects. If even Zhao recognized the potential dangers, why not just outlaw cryopod usage in our territory? The Terran leader cleared his throat. There are many valid concerns, but technology is often a double-edged sword, that is to say, it can be used for good or for evil. If someone has a terminal disease, and chooses to be preserved until a cure is found, cryopods may save lives. It could allow astronauts to hibernate through long voyages. Even with warp drives, it would take vast amounts of time and supplies to travel to neighboring galaxies. It takes years just to cross the full breadth of our own. We can have this debate at length at our next meeting, where I'll lay out scientific research on the positives this tech might achieve. Very well. We will listen to your arguments then, Cupo acknowledged. That's all I ask. Now, let us move on from the issues surrounding Talsk, and address what we should do with the rest of the Federation. As you know, the UN launched a cyber attack on all Kolshan-aligned principalities. Let me preface this by saying that this was the move that won the war. If those 200 parties had come to Alpha, we would have been slaughtered. However, the cyber attacks had the regrettable consequence of civilian loss of life, due to socio-economic collapses. The Dosur diplomat, Aller, twitched his whiskers. These species picked their sides, and they supported the Kolshans after everything. The Federation didn't regret picking off Dosur civilians, some of whom were only just recovered from the Shadow Caste's basement, in terrible condition. The treatment of the captives from Milo was criminal, and worsened by the fact that it was simply for standing with humanity. However, I reiterate our desire to limit loss of life, and not to radicalize civilians. We seek healing. We want these 200+ parties to surrender, so that we're not forced into this war any longer. That means that we're willing to send humanitarian aid and put the lights back on, for anyone who capitulates. It's also important to note that not all Federation members are in the same category. Forgive the interruption, Koji began, with unusual tact, but how so? I just heard Ambassador Aller point out that they supported the Kolshians after everything, including the attacks on Milo and Kalqua. The Durerden Shield originally hesitated to side with humanity, due to fears of opposing the Kolshians. Kalqua shows that there was true peril in challenging the Shadow Caste. Many parties were afraid of retribution, if they broke away from the Federation. There were quite a few who voted for neutrality, after Noah's speech, but didn't want to hop sides. You were in that same position once, Koji. I concede that point. I believe I once told a Venlil counterpart that it was hard to stick our necks out. It was why talks with humanity hadn't achieved results before us. Precisely. For parties that weren't involved as aggressors, I believe we can come to terms. Their existence as neutral powers doesn't threaten us. Honestly, if they so desire, I don't feel this changes anything about our diplomatic efforts before. We still wish to sway potential friends. This might open the door to new members of the Sapient Coalition, should they seek that avenue in good faith. What about the ones who don't act in good faith? Who acted against the SC? Tillfish Governor Burla hesitated, recalling how her species had once been a hostile power. I recognize the value of parole and second chances, after Silas has received one. However, not everyone can be trusted, or should escape punishment. The Harchan ambassador raised an appendage in support. I don't speak in defense of Fal's actions any more than Burla stands by what the Tillfish did. I agree that we should separate those who helped from those who were captive bystanders. Yet the truth is, there are true fanatics in the Federation. Many of these people have had ample opportunity to break from the ideology, but couldn't even see anything wrong with omnivores' treatment. Humanity is aware of the aggressors, such as the Malti, a species who'd practice orbital exterminations on sapients, at the Kolshians' behest, and see it as a normal military duty. We're informed about the most concerning subset, the fanatics, as you say. The difficult aspect of these is religion, something the Federation tailored to control worlds, something seen in many cultures, such as the Gojid's Great Protector, the Crocodiles in Atala, or the Iftali's consecrated order. Why don't they see from the archives that their religion is a lie? An Iftali diplomat piped up. Even before we had hard proof, Silene caught Nikonus bragging about co-opting omnivore religions. For the ones who weren't omnivores, such as the two most egregious examples, they believed their faith was natural. Even with proof, some wouldn't accept their beliefs as false. The reality is that cultists such as the Yulpa, who have actively sought human sacrifices, or the Dresden, who worship the Federation as divine avatars, will fight to the last. We'd like for absolute peace, yet these races must be treated as hostiles. Are you going to wipe them out? The TACCAN representative asked. We don't seek extinction, but the only solution we see is to rebuild their society, from the ground up. We don't wish to allocate troops for an occupation, or to directly engage more than needed. We'll ramp up cyber attacks, forcing them back to the technological drawing board. We'll target their leadership, religious and political. Then, we drop pamphlets and combat misinformation, in the hopes of an eventual surrender. It may take years, and after we've had time to recover, we may need to kickstart change by force. Zerulean Prime Minister Braylon raised a paw. So the war's not ending? Not altogether, but the threat to our safety is finished. There will still be cleanup for years to come, even on our own turf. We'll be rebuilding Kalqua, Earth, Nishtal, the Cradle, and many more through titanic efforts. I regret that this is the only way to bring peace to the SC. This is seeking the path of least violence, yet it's still an ugly one that forces the compromising of our morals. We've done the best we could to adhere to our ethics, while staving off enemies who don't afford us any rights. I take no joy in the suboptimal choices we've been left with on several occasions. There were no ensuing challenges from the assembled diplomats, while Zhao shuffled his notes. It was obvious that the final enemy, the one who'd yet to be addressed, was the orcs or Dominion, the carnivores who had terrorized us for centuries. Isif had offered a non-aggression pact during his speech at the summit, but some diplomats had been quite vocal about his species not deserving a continued existence. Either that conversation and the Nikonis Gizno video had a lingering effect on the coalition, or humanity would have to dig their heels in if they wished to spare their troublesome ally. I'm willing to fight with Governor Velm, despite his undoubted concerns about how the public will react to him tolerating the Greys. As long as Isif keeps to himself, and that his kind is punished at the first instance of reverting to old ways, I'll vote to allow it. I'll gloss over the unaffiliated Sivkit Grand Herd, who never re-established diplomatic connections with us or the Federation. If they want to be isolationist, after learning the truth, we should respect that and leave them alone, Zhao explained. So that leads me to the elephant in the room, which is the orcs. The Dominion surrendered after their humiliation, and there's a new government now. As I recall, after Isif's speech, certain diplomats believe that we're partial to predators, and you have staunch stances on not treating an orcs as a person. Many of you have trauma, some of you have even lost your homeworlds to their raids. Let me say, I don't expect you to forgive or forget. The Thafki diplomat's silver-gray ears twitched with anger. We had no world to ourselves, until you helped us carve something out. There were 12,000 of us in the wild, until you freed millions of our cattle, millions of damaged, battered, broken people, just like those who have strained other worlds' resources with their predator-diseased states. The orcs shouldn't be left alone, to do whatever they like without supervision. If you're not going to kill them, take away their damn ships. Their bombers ravaged Nishtal, something humanity played a role in. You know what the orcs do with their ships, Nuala squawked. Gojid Minister Kiri flicked her claws. Isif presided over the raid that left the cradle in ashes, and my species as a mix of sparse colonists and refugees. I understand how they feel, I whispered to Noah. Isif was responsible for that raid, targeted at Venlil schools. My little girl would be alive if not for him. I was willing to work with him, but with the war over, he shouldn't keep his bombers. Those aren't used for good. The astronaut grimaced. I can't imagine the grief, and I don't know how you put it aside to cooperate with Isif at all. Nobody would have blamed you for wanting outright revenge. I won't tell you to change how you feel. I wish we lived in a galaxy where everyone could disassemble their bombers, us included. War is hell. The argument raged on, with the Thafki ambassador Telekin's voice growing more heated. They view the Thafki as a delicacy. I don't care if the Kolshians let it happen, the orcs still did it. They should be locked in a Kessler cage at a minimum. They can't be trusted, and I certainly don't foresee opening relations with a race that remembers eating us. Lalo strained on his hind legs. The orcs were quite helpful at Milo and Kalqua. Our commanders were able to establish a cordial, working relationship with Isif, who helped save prey lives by the billions. I have no reason to believe he'd want to raid or eat anyone. He risked his own head to bring about the opposite, and expressed remorse to us. This is about a better future. I shouted, deciding that the Yodel couldn't argue for Isif alone. Isif always wanted that. He said something quite powerful to me long ago, that one can be both a victim and an oppressor. That is what that orcs is. To everyone's surprise, we now know that the Greys are capable of empathy, so I stress giving them a chance to change, just like the galaxy's other monsters. Their entire culture is based in cruelty, Cupo challenged. If that's not evil at every level, what is? Secretary General Zhao tapped the microphone. That is enough. Nobody is expected to even think about forgiving the orcs for generations, but we also know they were warped into monsters. The United Nations has every intention of monitoring them, and forcing them to live by civilized standards. Without purposeful starvation, there's no reason for raids. ISIF was crucial in liberating cattle, overthrowing the Dominion, and gathering allies against Alpha. Despite his past, we can't argue that we owe him our victory. If there's no reason for them to raid, why can't you take away their bombers? Keep them out of our space. Telekin yelled. We have negotiated terms to keep the orcs out of our space, in a 20 light-year bubble, leaving the SCB. The Dominion's cruelty-based legacy means that ISIF will be seen as weak, without maintaining a military. His government, the one that wants change, would collapse, so it's a necessity to allow him to keep his fleet. It's all for show, the UN will police him. Should the bombers vacate their territory, we have multiple cyber weapons ready to destroy the fleet. If ISIF can't be trusted, he won't get past the SC's welcome mat. Will that satisfy you? Not really. However, non-aggression is an upgrade over our former circumstances. We'll trust humanity to handle it, for now, but we'll be watching them closely ourselves. The United Nations welcomes assistance monitoring all powers confined to their territory, not just the orcs. We don't trust them ourselves. Zhao was hasty to pivot away, not allowing any further debate over his chosen resolution to ISIF. He'd baited Telekin into agreeing so smoothly, that other SC members might not realize it. That settles everything. We're quite grateful for the cooperation of our allies, to finalize the war's resolution, with the Treaty of Seoul. I look forward to discussions of our internal affairs next week, and I wish you all safe travels. Farewell. As the human leader dismounted the stage, I relished in the knowledge that the centuries-long war was over. The Predators had laid out a step-by-step process to steer the galaxy in the right direction, and to handle all parties that fell outside SC bounds. Noah's loving gaze studied me from the periphery, a warm blanket of security that drew my focus back to the band around my foretoe. His fingers traced over the ring's cool metal, which my brain had somehow normalized wearing. With today's ambassadorial duties complete, I didn't have to worry about protecting Venlil human interests anymore. My attention could center around our personal life together, with a wedding to plan and 2 children on the way. Now that I was starting a new family with such a remarkable person, I felt an eagerness for the future that was unmatched by anything I'd experienced before. Memory transcription subject, Onso, Yodel technical specialist. Date, standardized human time, April 9, 2137. Rather than settling down on Rinsa after arriving back at Learn, I had duties to fulfill for my people before heading home. I was summoned to mainland Thysun, after requesting to speak to the Technocracy's intelligence panel in closed testimony. Departmental leadership, implemented when we drove foreigners and Federation sympathizers away in the Great Reclaiming, was comprised of leading experts in various fields. The committee was a band of geopolitical specialists, threat assessors, and continuity of government planners. After seeing the quiet devastation of cyber warfare, I'd entreated my government to create our own cyber division. The Yodel couldn't leave our infrastructure vulnerable to malicious programs. While I doubt the humans will be our enemies in the near future, they still have the capabilities to unseat all our advancements without sending a single ship. We don't want anyone to have that level of power over us, like the Federation did. It wasn't impossible that other planets would develop such capabilities either, especially without the Kolshan-led stagnation. Preparing for all eventualities was something that my people needed to prioritize, so we had protocol to fall back on for even the most unlikely of challenges. It was like building redundancies upon redundancies in engineering. If something went wrong, there should be more fail-safes and backup plans than we'd ever need. That was Safety 101, and it shouldn't be any different with the security of our society. The Yodel Technocracy had made leaps and bounds since leaving the Federation. We were technological leaders, pushing the forefront of innovation alongside the humans. Being one of the original 3 to aid Earth, after Calcim's attack, meant that we were one of the most powerful nations in the sapient coalition, but it also meant we'd be a target for any ex-Federation members who resented the primates' victory. The technocracy was mistrustful of the surrendering neutrals, who were being weighed as trial additions to the SC. I wasn't thrilled about parties who hadn't stood up to the shadow caste, and their imperialism, having a say in the Alliance's internal affairs. I dropped a suggestion in my briefing, to enhance our digital espionage abilities. With that in mind, if anyone was plotting against us, militarily or diplomatically, we needed advance warning. I'd left thy son after several days of being questioned, on everything I knew about human and non-human military capabilities, and the exact details I'd written in my combat report. The intelligence panel promised to grant me a commendation for my seamless integration with our UN allies, before offering me my choice of a posting or a promotion, with their preference being a top-tier job in the research and development department. The idea of playing a part in our shipyard's mass construction program had appealed to me, almost as much as Sarah Rosario's prior offer to restore Learn. It would be prestigious, squarely in my field, and come with a pay increase. Plus, I imagined I could request to stay in Rinsa, my own backyard. Still, part of me wanted to leave the military behind. Tyler was waiting for me at the bullet train station, so I'd like to acquire his thoughts. I attended Carlo's funeral virtually on the locomotive ride across the Rinsa-Thyssen connector bridge, and stared out at the glistening ocean waves in somber reflection on all that had been lost. It once would have taken weeks by boat to travel intercontinental like this. The harbor where I'd spent days on the sailboat with Mama, salt spray on my lolling tongue and wind in my ears, was now replete with modernized haulers, though a few recreational ships, including an island cruise liner, were making a return. That turned my morning to a bit of optimism, as we'd restored traces of what made us the Yodel. "Well, hello Tyler," I murmured, spotting the tall human as the train pulled up to the station. His towering figure would stand out anywhere, even on Earth. "Why did you hang out here in Rinsa, while I was busy in thy son, instead of heading home? It can't be just to teach me surfing." I'd thought it was strange when Tyler took the shuttle down to learn surface with me. After the entire mission revolved around rescuing Slanek, I expected him to assure the Venlil's return. Instead, that fell to the handful of herbivore crew and Sovlin, who was lucky the Venlil didn't remember him. Officer Cardona's willingness to forsake the ship, with his promise to Marcel fulfilled, suggested he might want to put the exchange program first. This could be not just about the offhand remark to teach me surfing, but also about strengthening our friendship. The move seemed semi-permanent even, since he hadn't returned to his homeworld at all. According to our chats, he had his belongings shipped to him, and was living at a UN foothold on Rinsa. I love the idea of having some downtime with my friend, like we did in Brussels at our first meeting, but I can't turn down R&D for that. I already missed one prime opportunity for him. I need to help my family, and this pay hike could give my father retirement. Tyler grinned as he spotted me, and walked slowly up to the train station. The primate was in civilian pelts, a casual shirt with tropical trees printed on it and beige shorts. I imagined that choice of attire had something to do with loving Rinsa's warm and temperate climate. There had been reports not just of Terran refugees, but also of requests for tourism flooding in after the war's conclusion. The village council was discussing permits for a beach resort by the harbor, injecting life into our economy. They were even considering using old Yodel technology to give a medieval experience. It was strange for aliens to want to visit islanders that were considered backward savages, even among our own kind, but I was touched that someone saw the beauty in our way of life. "Buddy, the Michelin star ramen chef is here to rescue you," Tyler boomed, earning mystified looks from the other disembarking passengers. "I've been waitin' here, all by my lonesome, for you. I got some stuff to show ya." I twitched my ears with amusement. "You know, the exchange program doesn't have any official oversight anymore. It's over. I don't have to go anywhere with you." Too bad, you're my hostage. With that smart brain of yours, I think I could get quite a ransom. After all, you been chumming it up with the who's who of thy son. Wait a second, do y'all got some spy agency that's following you, now that you're connected? I don't wanna be black bag. I don't know. If you want to go through with holding me for ransom, you can find out. Nah. Don't feel like Callan, you're bluffed today. You're the one who bluffs. I've seen your mathematically dubious poker strategy. That implies that I have a strategy. Now quit taking the piss, and walk with me. I got something for you back at the UN compound. Fine, I agreed, allowing him to drag me off down the sidewalk. But you're gonna tell me why you've moved out here, and sat around waiting for me. Ain't it obvious? First off, I'm here growing out my hair, though it's gonna take way too long to get those surfer vibes. You were in thy sun for long enough, I was startin' to think I might have time to get some locks going. Now that you're back, I brought you aboard, and I'm gonna start teaching you how to ride the waves. I was silent for a long moment, mulling over how to respond. While I didn't want to shoot down his enthusiasm, and the idea of learning Terran water sports sounded amazing, I wouldn't have all this time during the day to devote to recreation. If I took the R&D job, I intended to work my ass off to advance the Yodel security. Sure, lazing around the beach under Ralki's warmth sounded divine, just as we had before setting sail to the Battle of Offa. It was a blessing that we'd come back alive at all, with the enormity of casualties in the orbital battle. Carlos' funeral, which we just listened into, had been a poignant reminder of that fact. Staying in touch with Tyler and trying to balance work and life would be my goal, but I also had to think of my family. My father isn't getting any younger, and the time I have left with him grows shorter, the longer he works himself to death. The paycheck will be good, but not quite as life-changing as Sarah's program. I hope Tyler didn't make any drastic moves to the detriment of his own career without consulting me. While I'd told myself I'd confront my friend, my mind was all but set on taking the job. It would have been a relief in many ways to leave the military behind, but I needed to secure my future, my loved ones' welfare, and my role in the Great Reclaiming. Very few people were offered two once-in-a-lifetime opportunities in short succession, so I'd be foolish to pass on an upgrade like this a second time. Years of studying engineering pointed to this path, so I wasn't sure why I yearned for something more peaceable. When I'd watched the bombs fall on Kato, my conscience had shuddered to think of building the tools to enable such devastation. Yet I knew the technocracy wasn't the Durerton shield, we wished to protect ourselves and level the playing field. It wasn't the same. Seriously, Onso, all I wanted since first contact was to be friends with aliens. Problem is, I'm louder and less cleaned up than Marcel, Tyler remarked, prompting me out of my silence. On Learn, there's none of the fucking fragile prey act. I thought a change of scenery would be good for me, else I'm gonna punch Hunter next time he makes one of his shitty comments. Sovlin needs a place to come home to more than me, he's doing good work. My tail swished in acknowledgement. That Gojid found his calling. I never thought I'd hear him praise the Yodel's culture, but the more I consider it, the more I think those primitive comments were rooted in jealousy, that we still have our identity. Maybe. Point is, I got a transfer here, to literal fucking paradise on my favorite SC planet. Being near my best friend is a cherry on top. You can nerd out about all the Yodel culture you want, Onso, we don't got nowhere left to go. Not even to check on Slanik and Marcel? The beauty of FTL comms. I don't like the idea of going to Skalga with put a visor on it, Velna's leader. Those two can come visit here, but I doubt that'll happen anytime soon. Shit, that's right, I meant to give you the scoop on how they're doing. Marcel's been texting me, and he sent a video update a few hours ago, but I saved it to watch with you. 1 second. The human flashed his canine teeth, nearly throwing his holopad into my hands after pulling up the video. It was the same enthusiasm that had led him to call Marcel back in the lab, which, in fairness, had paid dividends despite its risks. It was obvious how much Tyler cared for the people close to him, with how he'd pledged to go to the galaxy's most spectacular battle to rescue a friend. Despite losing the learn restoration job, I was glad that I'd gone with my friend. It would have been much harder to coax the Venlil back to the ship without me. If love had lasted through the brain experimentation, it was possible the hatred for Sovlin would have lingered too, once the salt monster laid eyes on him. I peered at the recorded face of the red-haired Terran, who had a sheepish Slanek curled up next to him in the video. Marcel smiled at the camera, with scars weathering his face. I'm checking in with lots of good news, though it's not all swimming. First off, Nulia has shown trouble at first getting attached to female figures. Can't blame her, after her mom abandoned her and, well, that's not fair. I should have shouldered more of the responsibility, but too many things were hitting me at once. Anyhow, she's finally starting to warm to Gensi. She really wants to join the Mahjong games with Gensi's human friends, but she's a bit too young and those are, on hold, because Slanek finds that to be way too much. Don't want in my house, the Venlil croaked. Supposed to be, safe. I know, buddy. I'll protect you, right? What the Kolshians told you about us isn't true. You lived on Earth and with our soldiers for months, and no humans hurt you. I don't remember. You said I trained with that, Tyler. He rescued me. When are we going to call him? Marcel's expression fell. We're calling him right now, buddy. Focus up, look at the holopad camera. You see, it's on. We've been filming for about 30 seconds. Tyler did go through the instinct suppression program with you, and we visited Skalga. What is Skalga? It's Venlil Prime's name now, they voted it in officially a few weeks ago. It was the name before the Federation, World of Death. You remember what I told you about them screwing over the Venlil? Don't cry, it's alright. I'll just keep reminding you of things. It's hard, keep things. Brain catches nothing. I'm tired. You can nap right here, until the nice Zerulean doctor comes to try to help you. If the Kolshians did this to you, then maybe it can be undone, right? I just wanted you to remember how our first visit to your planet together was with Tyler, while a cute little tillfish kid named Vernt rode on his shoulders. That was after he saved us on Silas, flying into headlong danger. He's a bro. Why don't you be a brave Venlil and wave at the camera? Slanek took a moment to locate the camera, before giving a disjointed swish of his tail. There. Sleep now. Marcel gently pulled the Venlil's already dozing head onto his stomach. Shit. You see what's wrong? I was going to start with the good news, like how my gene reversal went off without a hitch. No more allergic reactions from the slightest whiff of animal stuff. I can move back to Earth whenever, but I'm staying because Slanek needs me. Yes. Stay, the Venlil murmured. Love Marcel. You know I love you, buddy. I'm right beside you. I won't sugarcoat it, Tyler, our pal here is pretty fucked up. They did a number on him. His short-term recall is hit or miss, since he can hardly focus, so I wind up explaining things several times. Any human that's not me, sometimes even just sighted out the window, makes him shut down. That's why I'm recording this, and not calling you live. This is the best I can do to get him to talk to you. I pinned my ears against my head. By Ralki. This is terrible, seeing Slanek like this. I remember when he struggled with anxiety around us, but this is heartbreaking, Tyler whispered. Marcel forced his smile to return. We're making small progress, and Slanek's home. The best doctors at the Galactic Institute of Medicine are on it, and between Gensi and I, we can keep him on track. I hope you and Onso are doing well. You both risked your lives for us, so thank you for everything. It's a long journey ahead, but hopefully I'll be in touch with a more optimistic outlook soon. The video flickered out, and I padded a few more steps after Tyler in somber silence. It would be difficult for Slanik to escape the lab's effects, though at least he wasn't separated from his friend. I hoped that, with medical aid, he'd be able to regain his faculties. It was only as I passed the holopad back that I noticed we were nowhere near the UN compound, where Officer Cardona claimed to have a gift for me. I thought the primate spoiled the surprise by announcing that he'd transported a surfboard here, but this looked like the research complex for the Learn Restoration project. Sarah Rosario was waiting by the gates, a lab coat over her shoulders. Did Sarah reach out to Tyler somehow? She was definitely expecting us, and we didn't wander here by mistake. I don't want to get my hopes up, though. I turned down the job, and didn't expect her to hold it. Tyler clapped me on the back, his jovial mood returning as he saw my surprise. Surprise! My transfer was really as security for this complex here. You thought I wouldn't find out that you turned down this project for me, and didn't tell me so that I wouldn't feel guilty? I sensed something was off, so I did some digging. When I found out from Tyler why you passed up the job, Onso, I was even more impressed with you. Your loyalty is admirable, Sarah chimed in. I was happy to hold the position for as long as it took. I also took the liberty of getting the go-ahead from your government. The posting is yours, at the same price tag as the original offer, if you want it. You can't be serious. You both did that, for me? I blinked several times, recalling how enthusiastic I'd felt on my tour of the facility. The Hensas had been such a welcome sight from our past. R&D was a wonderful, technical gig, but this was the job that spoke to me. Yes. Ralki, I could leap into orbit with joy. I want nothing more than to restore Learn to its former glory, even if it means I have to work with this bozo. That's not very nice, living geyser of fun facts, Tyler objected. I spent weeks planning how to give you the perfect return home, and this is my reward? What do you humans say? Cope and seethe? Tyler scowled at me, before I tackled him in a hug. He pried my arms off of him, holding a finger to implore me to wait. His blue eyes winked at me, suggesting he had something else in store for fulfilling my dreams. I tilted my head to the side, watching as he hurried over to Earth animal cages outside the facility. I recalled the Terrans had been importing pets as a stopgap for Yodel citizens. The primate clasped a lead in his hands, coaxing a massive, mottled gray canine from the enclosure toward me. I recognized the dog as his pet, Zeus the Great Dane. Officer Cardona hadn't left Zeus behind on Earth? I supposed it would be possible to get permission for canine companions, but why bring him here ahead of my arrival? His beloved pet should be at his place of residence, in comfortable surroundings. The human's smile widened, as he fitted the leash's loop around my wrist. Zeus turned around to sniff at me with a wet nose, before wagging his tail with affection. The domesticated animal must recognize my scent from his owner's pelts. Tyler and I both talked about how you wanted a big dog, after the war, Sarah commented. The blonde human bobbed his head. I knew what I had to do. He's yours. My eyes widened, staring at the gigantic canine. What? No, I can't take Zeus, Tyler. He's your pet, you love him. Yeah, but I can't have him on the base. I know you'll take good care of him, so I wanted you to have him. Don't worry, I'll tell you everything you need to know about owning a pupper. Helps me too, 'cause I'll get to see him on a regular basis. It's a win for everyone involved. I don't know what to say. Say that Tyler is the best human to ever grace this universe. Fuck no. But I'll say you're a great friend. I'm glad I've gotten to know you. And if you're sure you're okay with it, I would be honored to have Zeus. He's going to be the most spoiled dog in the galaxy. Damn straight. Especially when I come over and bring him treats and dog bones. Definitely couldn't talk about how Predator Zeus loves chomping down on bones to any other herbivore. Long as it's not my bones, I don't care. Hence's hunted live prey back on the farm. Unless you got squirrel equivalents out here, Zeus won't chase nothin'. He's a good boy. He sure is. But I'm not sure I can take him right now. I'm sure I'm behind on lots of work in the project. I'm eager to get started, Dr. Rosario. Sarah chuckled to herself, stress lines fading from her face. Well, you start the job today, Onso. How about, for your first assignment, you take your dog home, and go to the beach with this guy for some surfing lessons. One day to enjoy time with your friend won't hurt anything. After all we've been through, I'll call it worth it just to see a video of this. Well, that's very kind of you, but it can. Tyler scowled at me. Don't you dare persuade her to assign you something, you deranged yodel. I've been waiting weeks for you to get your ass back from thy son. I did bring a surfboard, and we're going, right now. Come on. With my friend's stern expression leaving no room for argument, I acquiesced to his beach demands. The idea of building an entire society, rather than just spaceships, helped me feel that Learn was in control of our destiny once more. I hadn't dreamed that everything would fall back into place so perfectly, but I had Tyler to thank for that. He'd appreciated the sacrifice he was never supposed to know I made. There'd be no more missions to drag us away from home, and our packmates' fates were out of our paws. It was time to make a life here, one that involved a big dog today and hences in the future. I was grateful that I could live in a galactic community where I'd be seen as an equal, and that I could work alongside my friend to fulfill the magnificent dreams I had for the Yodel people. Memory transcription subject, Ambassador Tarva Williams of the Venlil Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 9, 2137. Under an immense amount of pain, it was difficult to remember why I wanted to have a child in the first place. I clung to Noah's hand as the contractions radiated pain through my body, finding it difficult to think. I forced myself to ruminate about how beautiful our family would be, and how much I loved my caring husband. Then again, no matter how supportive he wanted to be, he wasn't the one in excruciating agony. This required little effort on his part, didn't it? That wasn't a rational thought, but it was near impossible to be rational. Of course I wanted the astronaut here, to welcome his child. Just a little while ago, I'd been elated to see his reaction. The doctors prompted me to push harder, and I strained against my own pain tolerance. If I'd welcomed two predators to Skalga in the flesh, before I knew they wouldn't eat me, and wagered my entire civilization on a possibility, what was a little labor pain? I was a strong, fierce woman, and I'd be damned if I waited a moment longer to hold my child. Noah had barely left my side since the pregnancy began, but now, it was like his hand was glued in mine. My human watched with nervous eyes, terrified of anything going wrong. He pressed the other palm against my back, though it wasn't comforting enough to make up for the fact that my insides wanted to be on my outside. We're almost there. You're doing great, sweetheart, Noah whispered, inches from my ear. You're going to make the perfect mother. I believe in you, and I'm here for you and our child. There was a brief flicker of happiness, knowing that, despite his insecurities, my Noah would make a wonderful father. I remembered seeing his binocular eyes staring straight at me. As we exchanged vows, the astronaut liked the Venlil ones enough to choose them. Our wedding had been a quiet ceremony, closed to the public despite the fact that our relationship had controversially, on both worlds, been announced. We'd started out from Skalga on a sprawling spaceship we rented, with friends and family we invited. The ceremony had taken place halfway on the journey to Earth, before we landed in my husband's hometown for the reception. To imagine how it once would have terrified all of my maternal instincts, a predator being right next to my newborn child. Noah implicitly had my trust. My brain didn't register him as a threat anymore, not even in the subconscious bits. My abdomen screamed in unfathomable pain, warring for my attention, but I fought onward for our beautiful daughter. We discussed names, Venlil and human, and settled on tribute to a friend of ours who spent his last breaths seeking peace. Elia, her name would be, hearkening back to the dear Elias Meyer. It felt right for the people we'd lost to be a part of this new life, for their memories to be carried on. Elia is going to be beautiful, and I hope she takes after Meyer's diplomatic spirit. I wish he'd gotten to see this victory, and to know that humanity would survive as a prosperous power. Another wave of agony came with the newest spasm, as the process seemed never-ending. Stars, I loved my first daughter, but how had I forgotten how miserable this was? I had no more energy left, and even with desperate attempts to redirect my thoughts to Noah and his species, my motivation was waning. Why wasn't there a pause button on this ordeal? I tried to cling to something positive, though my brain begged for a reprieve. There were 2 cribs waiting in the nursery, where the planets of Skalga's system were painted on the ceiling. My human and I had a home together. It wasn't quite the opulent governor's mansion, but it was ours. What else? What else? Maternity leave from my ambassadorship would give me time to spend with my children. That was it. Children, plural. Despite all my research on how to rear a human infant, I was woefully unprepared for raising a predator. How strange it was that such a powerful, fearsome species would be so fragile and dependent on me. After a lengthy discussion, we decided to adopt a Terran boy that was 6 months old, since Venlil children matured quicker than the primates. 2 newborns would have been a massive undertaking, with the sleepless nights and round-the-clock care. While it wouldn't quite bridge the age gap, we wanted to bring the hominid home early enough that he'd bond with us from his earliest memories. Noah and I wanted to hear his first words, and when he took his first steps. The 2 of us were slated to visit the UN embassy, where the paperwork had been prearranged. Our little boy would be waiting for us in the peacekeeper's care. Elia's big brother was sitting there in limbo, and we couldn't meet him until I finished up here. I didn't want to wait a second longer before making it official that he was my son. I didn't want to wait any longer to have a Venlil daughter again either. Elia's life was set to start today. A strength bubbled within me that I didn't even know I had, as I warred against my body to bring a pup into the world. The pain reached its crescendo, blinding me for several moments. The doctors latched onto a small, silver object, while I fell back to the pillow with exhaustion. My gosh! That's Elia, I saw her little head. Are you feeling all right, Tarva? Noah asked. I perked my ears, as the sound of braying, feeble cries reached me. Elia's healthy, it sounds like. I don't know how I made it, but you have no idea how much that hurt. I hated seeing you in pain, my love. I wish there was something I could do to help, but I'm here every step of the way. You can rest now. No, I can't, Elia needs me. Let me see her. She needs someone to comfort her. The doctors passed me the wet bundle of fur, which was wriggling within the blanket. In an instant, the pain and exhaustion was forgotten. It was all worth it, worth enduring 1,000 times over, in a second. A dangerous protectiveness roared within me, as my precious daughter was passed into my arms. I held Elia close, trying to soothe her cries. Her fragile body was so impossibly loud for something so small. Those little eyes peered up to me, not yet knowing me as her mother. Her snout was a bright pink, with 2 tiny slits that represented nostrils. Her legs were fragile, yet the important thing was that they were not crooked. She would be a force of nature, with all of the senses and abilities that Venlil were meant to have. While the deformed people of my generation had been known as the weakest species in the galaxy, Elia would not share that repute. Without gene-mod gentling and prey instincts, she'd have the fighting spirit my ancestors resisted the Federation with. It was true that we were the most emotional species, but that wasn't weakness. My husband belonged to the race I believed was number 2 in the rankings for the strength of their feelings, and they'd toppled a millennia-old empire with their tireless spirit. The Farsal archivists had feared us in our anger more than humanity. Once enough Venlil accept the gene reversal, more than the millions who already have, there's no reason we can't go back to being a species that will never be broken or surrender. Children like Elia can accomplish anything, her future is bright, and not subject to any artificial biological limits. I couldn't wait to see how she inherited the best traits of both of our worlds. Our main residence was on Skalga, so that we could play a direct role in restoring the Venlil to our true selves. If the political situation for humans became more dire than Veln's pandering, I wasn't opposed to switching to Earth. I'd upend any part of my life, or place myself in harm's way any number of times, if it meant keeping my children safe. Noah smiled behind his holopad, snapping a photograph of me holding the baby. He reached out with his sturdy arms, as if prompting me to pass what was now the center of my entire world. I loved my husband dearly, but that affection was a mere seed in the ground compared to the ocean of adoration I felt for Elia. All I could see in my head was the tragedy that occurred the last time I let a daughter venture out of my sight. What if something terrible happened, because I wasn't around to protect her? I thought I trusted Noah to keep her safe, but the reality of letting her go left me torn up inside. I wanted to keep her in my grasp forever, never to let go. The predator tilted his head, eyebrows arching up. "Let me see the kiddo, Tarva. I know I've never held a baby, but I'll be gentle. Don't worry, I won't drop her. She's just the cutest thing." "Oh, my heart is melting," Noah said. "I'm a father, and it's like nothing else in the whole wide world matters." Tears swelled in my eyes, as I forced my heavy arms to pass the baby toward Noah. As the human's finger pressed through her fluffy, soft as a cloud fur, I couldn't release my grip. What if there was something I hadn't accounted for, such as Terran mates responding to a newborn in a way that would endanger a Venlil? It was irrational paranoia, but it wouldn't leave my mind. I took a deep breath, noticing the growing concern in his binocular gaze. This was the man who was my soulmate, who treasured me and who'd fallen over himself to accommodate my sudden dream of having Elia. I wanted to share it with him, no matter how difficult it was to expose her to any risks, regardless of how small they were. I steeled myself, and forced my paws to do something much more challenging than labor. I relinquished my grip on my daughter, and Noah took her out of my control. The Terran started grinning like an idiot, overjoyed to have her nestled against his elbow. She wasn't even the length of his forearm. The crying stopped the second the predator held her, and tickled her tiny nose with his fingertip. "Oh my, Tarva. I want us to be everything Elia needs." "How do we do that?" Noah whispered. "Together." My body finally relaxed, seeing my daughter safe in my beloved's arms. She looked like she belonged there, tucked against his chest. "You're a natural father. I'm sorry about earlier, it was just hard to let go. It'll get easier, one day at a time. I was worried you were scared of me, for a moment." "Can you blame me? Everyone knows humans eat Venlil pups for breakfast. Right next to the bacon and the orange juice." "You make a good point." "I always do. It's one of my many endearing qualities." "You can say that again. You know, since sweet little Elia is related to you, I think she's gonna kick her brother's ass. We have to watch out for her. I've heard true Skalgans are terrors. I'm hoping she'll take after her more mellow namesake. And on the topic of names, if we're going to bring home our other child today, we still need a name. We haven't settled on one. I don't know who else to pay homage to. I thought about Sarah or some variant of her last name, but Rosa is more feminine in your tongue. We were both the first pioneers to set sail from Earth on an FTL flight. She's a great scientific mind who's done a great service to both truth and human discovery, from Skalga's survey, to the empathy tests, to learn. I like the idea of taking a bite-sized snippet from Rosario. How about Ari? It's a bit more subtle. Ari. That does have a nice ring to it. We'll have to tell Sarah who inspired it someday. Hopefully, she'll come visit us from time to time so that we can. We're not that forgettable. When Sarah attended our wedding, it wasn't evident how often she intended to return to Skalga going forward. She'd piled tons of work onto her plate with the yodel. I hoped she'd be involved as an honorary aunt, but I imagined her ambitions to repair the galaxy wouldn't leave her much time. It was fitting to give a nod to her, as one of my original Terran friends. Elia and Ari would be reminders of two figures who were instrumental in making our family possible, free of Federation control or Arxer threats. It wouldn't be easy to raise a human and a Venlil side by side, but I was confident we could handle the challenges. I could imagine the children tussling in the grass, playing together and running around on strong legs. I'm not sure Elia can keep up with a persistence predator, but she won't tuck her out easily. Maybe Noah will be proven right about her being a handful. With both of us regarded as important historical figures, our children would have a lot to learn. We'd be under the spotlight, especially since I hadn't stepped down as Venlil ambassador, despite my interspecies marriage. Noah and I would teach our offspring not to be ashamed of our family or their own differences. We'd teach them to do what was right, regardless of the risks. A new era was dawning on Skalga, and this second chance at motherhood played right into the big picture. The Sapient Coalition could give us a forum to develop our own might, with the next generation bringing us back to our roots. The Venlil spirit might have been suppressed for centuries, but it wasn't snuffed out. The more I thought about it, the more confident I was that Elia wouldn't need my protection. It would be all of us needing protection from her, should she embrace her wild side. It was probably a good thing her brother and father would be from a predator race. Which customs and mannerisms would jump the gap, in our multiplanetary household? How would the Terran's kind-hearted nature manifest in my son? It was a relief that humanity wasn't under threat of extinction anymore. I wouldn't have to worry about Ari belonging to an endangered species. All of this started when I met you, I told Noah. To think I almost let the Federation take away the one person who understands me implicitly. Who will make our family, who made my heart, whole. The human handed Elia back to me, the loopy smile still on his face. I helped, Tarva, but you did all of that yourself. I just proved whatever was written about us in that dossier wrong. You sure did. You want to know what I was thinking, when I saw your ship coming? Wow, that ship is smoking hot. The pilot must be a stud? No, you big goof. I thought there were 2 known instances of a predatory species achieving sapience. I listed it all out in my head. And now, you know it was all the omnivores too? Actually, I know now that I was right about there being 2. I was just wrong about who. The Kolshians and the Farsal were the 2, bringing about cruelties and atrocities to maintain control. The ones who would have kept us apart. I can't wait for whatever our family's future holds. Me too. All I wanted was friendship and peace in the stars, but you gave me so much more. Looking at Elia, I didn't know it was possible to feel such deep emotions. I'll be by your side forever, Tarva. Staring into Noah's loving eyes, I was certain that this was humanity's true nature. They were a species that would be loyal to the ends of the universe, and would endure anything to protect the people they cared about. Their mere introduction had brought out the best in dozens of races, and altered the course of galactic history. For all my internal fears, I knew Elia and Ari would be lucky to have a predator, the love of my life, watching over them. I couldn't imagine having a life and a family that was any more perfect than this one. Memory transcription subject, Captain Calsim, United Nations prisoner. Date, Standardized Human Time, January 1, 2150. Humanity was a species that I had equated to a virus, something infectious that would take over everything they touched. As I watched the galaxy transform through news reports and a closed internet link in my cell, I saw that I was right on that front. Their culture became a dominant powerhouse, with entertainment franchises that ballooned in ways unimaginable for predator ideas. Terran bands toured across entire planets, playing at festivals to diverse audiences. Sometimes, those gatherings were devoted to restoring the pasts shown in the archives. Films and games with gratuitous input, from binocular-eyed characters to predator-diseased violence, sold like wildfire. Terran traditions and mannerisms became known across the galaxy. Earth became the heart of the sapient coalition, as they began to move past the bombing. I'd regretted that I had no choice but to cut their cities down, even before my mission was a failure. One by one, the Terrans rebuilt every last one of the major epicenters from the ashes. Their technological advances came at a staggering rate. Vienna, which currently hosted over 100 alien embassies, had also become a hub of scientific research, ever since it had been deemed the host city of Project Chronicle. That was a project to restore the teachings of every species' depraved past, so they could go back to their barbaric, primitive ways. Tens of thousands of aliens arrived on Earth's soil to participate in the restoration efforts. Genetic advancements piled up from the sister project, as the United Nations gradually convinced more former omnivores to remove their meat allergies. That included the crocodile, restoring their bloodlust, after Terrans replaced our honorable government with some wishy-washy plant, Nuela. I was appalled to see how far my species had fallen. It wasn't long before former Federation oddities appeared on news programs about dabbling in these culinary sins. Part of why these races were so curious to try the full-fledged human meals was that their vegetable dishes had spread along with their culture, and wowed with their complexity. To think, those fools patronized a predator's banquet. The cure that I begged the Terrans to take, they truly did pity us for having our bloodlust removed. In a little over a decade, they've undone millennia of progress. It had been hopeless the moment the Kolshians fell to their onslaught. The humans launched attack after attack on the very foundation of the Federation's beliefs. Exterminators, the very profession I'd once been a part of, either shuttered their doors, or became something unrecognizable that went by other names. Terrans convinced the public that predator attacks were sapient assaults, and once that idea was planted, it became true. They'd also activated pity for the burning beasts, like I'd felt the first time I doused younglings in gasoline. It was a horrific process, sure, but necessary to remove their traces. How contaminated must all these worlds be now? I mused aloud, staring at the dingy walls of my tiny cell. Humans have spread to almost every planet. They start more colonies before even filling up the old ones, just for some domineering drive. My voice was fraught with both age and disuse. Sometimes, I talked aloud to keep myself sane. When the humans gave me the internet link, it came with a caveat. They kept sending me profiles on Terrans who died during my raid, forcing me to look at the details of their lives. I couldn't access the rest of the web until I watched the morning's videos. Hadn't I been burdened with enough guilt, knowing they were feeling and compassionate creatures? I didn't know why I craved connection to this awful reality enough to go through such torment. For some reason, I always watched their October 17th ceremony, a planetary holiday not just across Earth, but many SC powers as well. Remembrance Day, they called it. I remembered all of the impossible choices I'd had to make, protecting other lifeforms over Terrans. I remembered standing on that bridge, desperately trying to fire off our bombs as the orcs arrived, and I remembered it too well, even in my old age. Part of me had hoped either natural conditions would free me from this world through death's release, or that they'd wipe my memory clean of the awful things I'd seen. In the end, I knew I'd damned Nishtal and killed millions on Earth in a sacrifice that amounted to nothing. The kernels of doubt were the worst part of it. Still, I remembered what was wrong with these Earthlings as I watched every aspect of the Federation crumble. Predator disease facilities were a target of their assault. Despite their prior assertions that predator attacks were done by wicked minds, the humans thought that was something that could be talked away, and that the herd shouldn't be protected at all. I recalled how dangerous Jayla had been, even with someone like me to control her. Those violent desires, coupled with a lack of empathy, could result in attacks if extraneous behaviors weren't stopped. Terran psychology babble was one of their most outrageous takeovers. Nothing was sacrosanct. The humans fought to preserve wild predators that'd eat anything that crossed their jaws, due to their warped view of ecology. It was a far cry from the doctrine of little predators becoming big predators, and reproducing exponentially. Species like the yodel didn't have the refinement to resist uncivilized nonsense. Those marsupials were among the first to welcome Terran attacks on all of these fronts. Governor Veln, who I'd had such high hopes for, became a noncommittal flip-flopper who seemed to be altering Venlil society, in crawling increments. He lost re-election by a landslide, and someone from Tarva's corner was right back in power. I've seen all of our sacred beliefs attacked by humans, and how much damage they've done to the chance the Kolshians gave us to be civilized. I've watched them spread throughout the stars, just like I feared, and I've seen they're never satisfied. They still plan to push further. Years of my life were spent in a waiting game, for the eventuality that I'd promised to Arjun, back when we held him hostage. Humanity's growth would lead to them building an empire off of the backs of prey species, as predicted by their history. Without being gentled and saved from their innate sin, their bloodlust would lead them to temptations, and the atrocities would begin. I assumed it would happen with the Federation powers that didn't surrender. When the United Nations' mighty military sent out manpower to overthrow governments, starting with the Yulpa homeworld of Granelka, I assumed it was the beginning. My prophecies would be vindicated. These races, including their so-called friends, were weaker than them, playthings at best. With their foot soldiers back out on the prowl, they'd get a taste for killing and enslaving other cultures once more. They didn't have to play at docility for their survival, so what was to stop them from giving in to their true nature? What was to prevent them from taking what belonged to others for themselves, with their military now stronger than the fledgling force that still defeated the 1,000-year-old Kolshian Empire? There was no reason for them to restrain themselves, or to be able to restrain themselves, and yet they did. Granelka, and dozens of worlds that followed it, had their leaders cut down with precision, and then, they were rebuilt from the ground up. The humans took the time to create something new from their strike, setting up new agencies that were staffed by locals and wouldn't answer to the UN. With hostile powers under their crosshairs, the Terrans showed mercy. They wanted others to stand on their own as equals, a concept that violated the core of what being a predator meant. Humanity has spread everywhere, and taken our systems, just as I knew they would. Exponential growth, I chirped aloud. Yet more herbivore worlds haven't fallen. What happened to their inner violence? Their phenomenal cruelty? If my mission hadn't been for the Federation's survival, then I hadn't needed to spearhead the extermination fleet at all. All I saw in humanity's ventures, whether through implied or outward motivations, was endless compassion. For the weak and vulnerable. For the herd anomalies. For those who'd sought forgiveness after grave insults. For those that didn't deserve their compassion, just as that Terran judge had spared me, despite what I'd inflicted on his kind. I couldn't understand how it was possible, and yet their astounding empathy was all that I found. Predator volunteers rushed off to every world, working impossible hours daily for little compensation, as cattle rescues overwhelmed local systems. Human scientists used their new genetic capabilities to scrutinize diseases, even ones that didn't affect their species at all. The United Nations were the cooler heads among the SC, staving off vengeful deeds. Earth was the sole party that actually processed asylum requests from caged Talsk, and spent inordinate amounts on ships capable of shrugging off the Kessler syndrome. War tribunals held in Vienna issued blanket pardons for all child soldiers, much to the outrage of their allies. Human civilians' ventures were delighted to strike up partnerships, parallel to the government's close work with Lern, Skalga, Kolia, Kwa, and countless others. Had humanity truly deserved to be purged from existence like a disease? Was this all just hatred over their appearance and their diet, like the pilot begging for his family's life had told me? After all this time, their hunger and bloodlust should have surfaced, with unequivocal proof of what they were. They had every opportunity to at least sate their hunger for power. They founded the largest faction in the galaxy. Hundreds of millions of aliens lived on Earth, and the cultural blending meant they would have to hide their instincts at all times. Someone was always watching. Yet they never falter. What if they aren't masking their instincts, at all? It had been a simple truth that predators killed by nature, but now, I wasn't so sure. When Silene interviewed me, before my trial, I'd stood by my comparison of humanity to a virus. Their rejection of the cure was what led me to believe that their good side wasn't strong enough to salvage. I'd waited for them to conquer the rest of the galaxy, yet with the passing of time, I'd begun to understand that they already had. Not with guns, bombs, or starship armadas. Not with occupations or pillaging. The Terrans conquered the galaxy through compassion, a desire for friendship and healing that existed without any modifications to their predator coding. Perhaps they'd done horrific things to each other many years ago, but I could see that humans had become something else altogether. Their true selves, at the pinnacle of their advancement and the height of their power, were galactic caretakers, capable of emotion on par with the Venlil. For every Federation tenet they perverted, I couldn't help but notice they'd ushered in a level of peace incompatible with any goals of violence. Life was better under their rule than the Kolshians or the Farsal. It was an unacceptable truth, to realize Earth would never be a spacefaring planet of domineering brutes. The enormity of the guilt crushed my very soul and conviction. The tragedy was how truly unnecessary my genocide had been. Everything that we'd believed about humanity's intentions was patently false, despite all wisdom and prior experience. Their emotional depth drove them, with a legitimacy that shouldn't have been possible. There could be no greater punishment than to watch the galaxy move on without me, and to be forced into slowly realizing how erroneous my understanding was of the fundamental nature of predators.